Chapter 663. In the endless distance, in the eternal void, there was a giant nebula. Hundreds of stars dotted this nebula like pearls in the deep sea, sparkling with radiant light. In the center of the nebula was a super-celestial body that was at least 3 times larger than an ordinary planet. Its surface was covered with mountains and lakes, and white clouds floated about. It was as tranquil and beautiful as a painting. Without warning, a fluctuation appeared and rapidly spread outwards. It was like a meteor falling into the deep sea, setting off endless tsunamis. The mountains and forests were crushed to powder like bubbles. The peacefully floating white clouds were instantly wiped clean. The clouds scattered and a palace was revealed at the summit of a mountain. It was exposed to the bright sunlight, reflecting the light of the sun and forming a rainbow of colors. Deep within the temple, a cultivating Taoist opened his eyes. Thunder flashed within them. Then the entire nebula was instantly torn apart by trillions of lightning bolts. Who is it? Who dares to touch my primordial spirit avatar? You must die. The moon hung high in the sky, sprinkling down a cold light. In the massive city below, in a tea house on the side of the main road, Undying was sitting alone in his black robes. He was calmly drinking a cup of tea. But at this time, lightning flashed in his cup. Crackle, crackle, lightning covered him. Within this lightning, one could faintly make out a vast nebula. Undying's complexion changed. He stood up and darkness erupted from his body, rapidly spreading outwards and covering the entire city. Rumble, rumble. A heaven-shaking explosion erupted. Countless lives in the city shivered. As they looked at the explosion of light in the darkness, their faces paled. My little master, you have really given me a great pleasant surprise. As he bitterly muttered to himself, the darkness rapidly converged and Undying's figure vanished from sight. The table, chairs, and tea set all disappeared, as if they had been erased from a painting. Immortal sect world. The eyes of the Taoist phantom that was caught by the 12 metal giants suddenly lit up. At this moment, the feeling he gave off became even more terrifying, as if a great, slumbering beast had truly awakened. Kacha! Kacha! The surrounding space began to disintegrate. Within the Taoist phantom, the 5 sitting cross-legged Buddhist sovereigns all cried out miserably as their flesh and blood began to wither away. At the same time, the Taoist phantom became more corporeal, as if it wanted to use the flesh and blood of these 5 people to fill in the gaps and turn itself from illusory to reality. Roar, roar. Flames burned in the eyes of the 12 alchemy giants at the same time, and a portion of the original power of Undead Scourge was completely detonated. The surface of the Taoist figure was instantly covered in cracks, and within these cracks, dark red blood flowed out. The cries of the Buddhist lord and the other were getting more and more tragic. It was as though they were the ones who were about to be ripped apart. Undead Scourge, descending shadow began to collapse. All of its power was extracted and gathered on the bodies of the 12 alchemy giants, turning them into the most terrifying killing machines in the world. Under the 32 giant hands, the illusionary figure of the Taoist was shattered. Fresh blood sprayed out and instantly dyed the sky red. Thunder roared suddenly, followed by heavy rain. The rainwater was scarlet in color, like viscous blood. The wind howled between the heavens and the earth, whimpering and whimpering as if it was crying. Today, a supreme being of this world had fallen. Emperor Ying's eyes widened, revealing pain and astonishment. The light in his eyes had completely disappeared, losing all luster. Up until the moment of his death, he'd never imagined that he would actually fall to such a state. But death was death. It would not be merciful to anyone. When one was swallowed up, everything became nothing but an illusion. His plans for hegemony, his ambitions to conquer the world, his countless years of hard work, everything he had painstakingly prepared from now on, all of that was meaningless. Unexpectedly, the severely wounded, Nether Domain Master was actually in the best condition right now. Of course, this so-called best condition was only relative to the miserable appearances of the Buddhist Lord and Emperor Zhou. They were still weeping blood, and their faces were withered. Dark fluctuations erupted, wrapping around the Buddhist Lord and Emperor Zhou. The two of them roared out in alarm and anger, "Nether, what are you doing?" The darkness didn't answer, only becoming increasingly profound. The Buddhist Lord and Emperor Zhou's voices were filled with fear. Loud rumbles echoed out, but it was clear that their resistance was meaningless. They gradually fell silent. Qin Yu frowned. He looked at the darkness in front of him. Tiny sounds echoed out, like the sound of chewing, swallowing. He couldn't suppress it. A cold chill rose up from the depths of his heart, instantly spreading through his entire body, causing his scalp to tingle. At this time, the darkness rapidly converged, or it was more accurate to say that it fused into the figure within. Its torso, limbs, head, all of it was similar to a human, but that was as far as it went. Dark purple scales covered its body, thick and dense, like layers upon layers of fish scales. It covered everything that could be seen. Its eyes elongated and narrowed, as if a blade had cut open its head. It was impossible to see the eyeballs, only darkness so rich that it couldn't be dissolved. It was like an endless abyss, capable of swallowing all. On its hands and feet, its nails, toenails, stretched out, turning into long claws that shined with a metallic luster. Two short, sharp horns were arranged symmetrically on both sides of his forehead. They were bright red, as if they had been polished from blood jade. A thin, triangular tail was slowly swaying behind him. Abyssal demon. With just a glance, Qin Yu recognized this. This was the terrifying race that had descended upon the land of divinity and demons billions of years ago, the one that had created a monstrous catastrophe. In the past, if it weren't for the rise of the great Zhou and the gathering of all the strength of the land of divinity and demons, the current world would have been occupied by abyssals, and all life would have been reduced to food. But this terrifying race had clearly been exterminated. Who would have thought that one of the three giants of the dignified immortal sect, the Nether Domain Master, was actually the incarnation of a demon? But it was clear that this was the truth. The Buddhist sovereign and Emperor Zhou's robes were torn to shreds. They were stained with blood as they powerlessly fell from the skies. The two of them vanished without a trace. There was no need to say what happened to them. Your Majesty, the demon sovereign, is truly formidable. To think that you would grasp such a terrifying strength. I, Abyssal Overlord Babesa, express my sincerest respect to you. The demon bowed, his voice deep and low as if he were striking iron. It reverberated through the void, carrying with it a strength that shook the heart. But what a pity! This is not a strength that your Majesty originally possessed. After using it once, it will vanish forever. Qin Yu's eyes were icy cold. He slowly said, I can only erupt with a single strike, but my immortal source has been destroyed. To deal with a mere demon, my strength is more than enough. The Nether Domain Master, no, he should be called Abyssal Overlord, Babesa smiled. Your Majesty's confidence is truly admirable, but you have underestimated the strength of Abyssal Overlord. Then, I ask your Majesty to enter my stomach and become a part of me. Schwa. An afterimage remained where it was. Babesa didn't seem to move at all, but his sharp, blade-like claws had already come crashing down. Space was cut apart, like a striking scar in the snow. But what it represented was that the world had been torn apart. This was true shattering. All the lines of rules had been thoroughly severed, and from where they were cut apart, they were rapidly annihilated, vanishing from the world forever. Chapter 664. Solitary Westgate broke through space and stepped out. The first thing he saw was Babesa, who had returned to his original demon form. His complexion changed. Demon race. Qin Yu said in a low voice, He is the Nether Domain Master. Solitary Westgate looked up, his eyes violently fluctuating. He revealed a look of understanding, pain, and finally monstrous killing intent. "It's you. It's all because of you." Mournful roars tumbled through the air, like the roar of thunder. Babesa turned around, a strange smile appearing on his scaled face. This overlord had no choice but to reveal my true form in order to find the murderer of my wife and child. How pitiful and lamentable. Your wife and child in the underworld must be very disappointed in you. Solitary Westgate had a pained expression. I should have thought of this. I should have thought of this. In the past he had risen like a comet, but he didn't have any direct conflict with the immortal sect. He had always been puzzled as to why he had suddenly killed them. But today, everything had an explanation. The Nether Domain Master was the incarnation of a devil overlord. As for his wife, Yun Yang, she had the bloodline of light flowing within her. She was the nemesis of all abyssals. He already knew this, but there were no longer any traces of abyssals in the land of divinity and demons. In the past, he had followed this trail and obtained some specious information. But in the end, after determining that there was no value to it, he had turned to other aspects. Reality was cruel like this. If he had continued to investigate, he would have definitely obtained some harvests, and he wouldn't have been ridiculed by his mortal enemy today. In particular, Yun Yang and Anning had suffered unjust deaths until today. Solitary Westgate's face twisted. Qin, you didn't know of any of this, but it wasn't hard to guess everything from the scene in front of him. Looking at the pained and remorseful Solitary Westgate, he roared out, "Westgate, you have finally found the greatest enemy of your life. Do you only know how to whimper? Yun Yang and Anning are looking at you. What you should do the most is kill this abyssal and take revenge for them." "That's right, what you said is right. What I should do the most is take revenge. Take revenge." Solitary Westgate's voice was low and gloomy. He looked at the devil overlord, a ruthless and cruel light sweeping through the world. "I will tear you to pieces and grind your bones to ashes." He raised his hand, and the clouds instantly filled the sky. Thunder roared, and the endless lightning interwove together, forming the image of an incomparably huge Qilin. The Qilint's eyes were bloodshot as a monstrous pressure erupted from within, bringing with it a terrifying aura that could seal the heavens and earth. Babesa smiled. "Come, pitiful little fellow. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you that the blood of your wife and child is very delicious. I have missed it for countless years. Kill." Solitary Westgate was like a demon. The Kirin phantom reared its head back and roared. 1,000,000 bolts of thunder descended at the same time, shooting towards the devil overlord like arrows. Bang! All the lightning clashed together and instantly fused into a huge pool of lightning. The lightning surged like raging waves, emitting an aura that could destroy all living things. Qin Yu frowned. He could feel the terrifying strength contained within the pool of thunder, but the demon overlord's aura hadn't weakened in the slightest. No, not only did it not weaken, it was actually getting stronger. It was like when Solitary Westgate summoned the Thunder Kirin and sent down the destructive thunder. It was to supplement his strength. "Haha, Solitary Westgate, is this all you have? You want to rely on this to take revenge for your wife and child? Keep on dreaming." Babesa wildly laughed from the pool of thunder. Qin Yu roared out, "Don't be fooled. The devil overlord is deliberately provoking you. He wants to borrow the power of thunder to restore his own strength." But at this time, Solitary Westgate seemed to be completely lost in his hatred. He didn't listen to Qin Yu at all. Instead, he stimulated the power of the god beast even more fiercely. The thunder in the skies became even more wild. Lightning constantly bloomed between the clouds in the skies, turning into bolts of lightning that crashed down. This is getting interesting, but it is still far from enough. Solitary Westgate, even if you know that I personally killed your wife and child, you will never be able to take revenge for them. In this life, you are doomed to be an incompetent weakling. The devil overlord's callous voice echoed out once more. "Die, die, Die. Solitary Westgate's expression was fierce and fierce. His body swelled up in the air, and traces of blood appeared on his taut skin. Tiny blood vessels ruptured in his eyes. Every time one ruptured, the blood-red color in his eyes became a bit darker. In the clouds, the Kirin phantom revealed a pained expression. It wasn't the complete main body of a god-beast. Once the strength of its godhead was consumed too much, it would fall into a weakened state. It might even be unable to maintain its godhead, causing it to collapse. Qin Yu took a step forwards and flew towards Solitary Westgate. But before he could approach, he was forced back by a fierce fist. Screw off. Anyone that dares to stop me from taking revenge will die. Qin Yu's complexion paled. This wasn't because he was angry, but because he had confirmed that there was something wrong with Solitary Westgate's current state. It wasn't that his mind had been blinded by hatred. Rather, he had unknowingly fallen into a trap. The Abyssals possessed the most terrifying attribute of destructive strength, but they also possessed the ability to bewitch and play with the hearts of others. A long time ago, when they descended upon the land of divinity and demons, they had relied on this ability to control several formidable forces. Their military might had nearly swept away the world. The monster race that was expelled into the northern snowy region and had to endure tens of millions of years of punishment was one of the formidable forces that were controlled by the Abyssals. It was clear that Solitary Westgate had fallen into a trap set up by the Abyssal Overlord. The Abyssal Overlord wanted Solitary Westgate to use everything he had to help him restore his strength. He could not ignore this. A cold light flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. He lifted a hand and pointed out a finger. Then, without hesitation, he pointed out a second finger, a third finger, a fourth finger. With 4 fingers for phantoms appeared at the same time. With a loud rumble, great waves seemed to rise up between the heavens and earth. Wild fluctuations destroyed all. The Abyssal Overlord could swallow strength to restore himself, but there was bound to be a limit to this. Otherwise, even if there was an endless world, it would have been completely occupied by them. Are you deliberately provoking Solitary Westgate to use his strength to restore yourself? Good. Then I'll let you eat to your heart's content. I'm just afraid that if you eat too much, you'll blow yourself up. Bang, 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 boundless, blue spirit, blue sea, and blue heaven, for fingers erupted at the same time. They gathered together, forming an incomparably terrifying strength that instantly pierced through the pool of thunder. A straight channel appeared, revealing the figure of the Abyssal Overlord. The scales between his eyebrows shattered, and a clear finger mark appeared. Destructive strength crazily poured into it, like a broken dam. Although I've already witnessed it once, it is only after experiencing it for myself today that I realize how terrifying your Majesty, the Demon Sovereign, is. The strength of 4 fingers can cover the entire world, forming the killing momentum of all the heavens. It is truly fierce to the extreme. Babassa's face was full of praise, but by relying on this finger, it can only barely wound me. It is unable to cause any substantial harm to me. Chapter 665. A strength that surpassed the limits of what it could withstand would be blasted into the void with the spiral horns as a medium, allowing the world itself to bear it in its place. As long as this world wasn't broken, then no matter how terrifying the impact of strength was, Babasa would be safe and sound. The strength of the abyssal demon race was truly formidable and strange. It was no wonder he was so reckless and fearless, even daring to face Qin Yu and Solitary Westgate together. Your Majesty, Demon Sovereign, you should be proud of yourself for forcing me to reveal my true body. Babasa laughed. In order to show my respect to you, I will allow your Majesty to die a painless death. Qin Yu remained silent, as if there was nothing he could do. Babasa's laughter became increasingly rampant, his voice constantly echoing through the air. You are afraid. Babasa's laughter suddenly stopped. He looked at Qin Yu, an incomparably strange light in his eyes. You are indeed afraid. Babesa smiled. Where did your majesty demon sovereign come to this conclusion? Chinyu lightly said, to vent a strength that surpasses the limits of what it can withstand into the world itself, it seems impossible to resolve. But this proves one thing. His eyes sharpened like sword light. You absorb strength from the outside world to restore yourself, but there are limits and limits. If you were to block the channel through which you vent this strength and force it to gather in your body, just what would happen? Babasa's smile faded. He clapped his hands together, a look of praise on his face. You are truly worthy of being your majesty, demon sovereign. Your thoughts are truly meticulous. You are actually able to sense the secrets of my abyssal race. His words changed, filled with a mocking tone. But in this world, there is no lack of intelligent people. The abyssals run rampant through the myriad heavens, and countless people know of the flaws of my race. But just who can use them? An abyssal demon had a pair of horns on its head. This was where the essence of life converged. As their cultivation increased, they would obtain all sorts of inconceivable supernatural abilities. Babesa was currently a demon overlord, just a step away from becoming a great overlord. His horns seemed solid, but they were impossible to touch. This was because the space around them was in a state of endless layers that cycled endlessly, making it impossible to pass through. Since they couldn't be touched, who could block the strength that was vented out from those horns into the world? Chinyu had no expression. Is that so? I want to give it a try. He took a step forwards and raised his hands towards the heavens. Roar! With a roar, a towering, illusory figure appeared out of thin air. Its body was as tall as the heavens, and its eyes were filled with arrogance, as if the heavens and earth could not make it lower its head. The undying true spirit of the ancient race ancestors. The true spirit synchronized with Chinyu. It lifted its hands and spread open its fingers. Then it fiercely grasped, as if it wanted to grasp something hidden within. His 10 fingers curled and tightened his grip on his arms. His muscles instantly bulged as he let out a low roar. Rumble! The shadow of a mountain appeared in the sky. It seemed to be buried deep in the endless void, and now it was grabbed and pulled into the world bit by bit. Before it had completely descended, there was already an endless suppressive aura erupting from the shadow of the mountain. The air between the heavens and the earth suddenly became viscous, like the pitch-black mud of a swamp that could submerge and swallow everything. Babasa's expression changed. Ancient race, you're an ancient. This was the first time that Chinyu stimulated the strength of the ancients to the limit and summoned the complete projection of the ancient holy mountain. He could no longer hide his identity as an ancient. The abyssal demon race, even when placed in the myriad heavens, could be ranked as one of the top 10 strongest races. Their influence spread throughout the highest heavens and 10 earths. If it weren't for the fact that the abyssals loved infighting and their commanders constantly slaughtered each other, they might even be ranked in the top 3. But there was no absolute strength in this world. When the terrifying abyssals faced the weak descendants of the light bloodline, their strength would be completely restrained. In addition, there were several other races that possessed the strength to suppress the abyssals. Among them was the ancient race. To be more precise, it was the strength that came from the ancient Holy Mountain's inheritance. Even though their race had completely withered away, it had never been occupied by anyone. Suppressing sea, suppressing heavens, suppressing 10 directions. The name of the sea was endless. The name of the heavens encompassed all worlds. Suppressing 10 directions meant to encompass all things and all things. Suppressing the endless sea. Suppressing the heavens of all worlds. Suppressing all things and all things. The ancient race's 3 holy mountains were famed throughout the myriad heavens. The decline of the ancient race in the past was greatly related to this. With the strength of the holy mountains, it could indeed seal away the supernatural abilities of the abyssal horns, even if their master was a powerful abyssal overlord. How hateful! Chinyu is an ancient. He is actually an ancient. Babesa roared out in his heart. His strength had been severely damaged, and his main consciousness had been in a deep slumber these past years. So he hadn't discovered this ahead of time. In his current state, once the channel through which the horns vented their strength was sealed off, the strength within his body would inevitably run wild and he would explode to his death. There is no need to panic. Even if Chinyu is an ancient, with his current cultivation, he can at most summon the phantom of a holy mountain. The descending suppression is limited. As long as I restore some of my strength as soon as possible, I can erupt with an overlord level strike and kill him and solitary Westgate. The sea-suppressing holy mountain completely descended. It was like a channel had been blocked, and the amount of strength that poured into the world rapidly decreased. Babasa's entire body swelled up. His face turned crimson, and blood-red light seeped out from his eyes. He stubbornly stared at Chinyu. I never imagined that you would be an ancient. But what of it? With your strength, it is impossible for you to summon a second holy mountain. Today, the one who will have the last laugh will still be me. Chinyu's face paled. He lowered his head and gently gasped for breath. Babesa was right. With his current cultivation, summoning the complete sea-suppressing holy mountain was indeed a bit strenuous, but he still had a card in his hand. Within his chest, his heart began to vigorously beat, causing blood to rapidly flow through his body, emitting loud crashing sounds. Ancient. With a single word, a bleak and desolate aura appeared between the heavens and earth. Across from him, Babasa's eyes widened and he screamed out, "You dare to incarnate into an ancient in the great sun world? You are seeking death. Born to support the world." Rumble, rumble. Clouds moved in all directions. Endless heaven and earth, spiritual strength, formed a tide visible to the naked eye that submerged Chinyu's figure. Unfalling spine after death. The gathered heaven and earth spiritual strength seemed to be drawn in by a black hole, wildly pouring into it. A giant figure slowly appeared. Nebulas seemed to circulate in his eyes, able to hold the heavens and make all living beings bow down. After 1,000,000,000 years, another ancient had finally appeared in the great sun world. Like a drop of ink falling into water, the fluctuations it produced rapidly spread outwards. These fluctuations didn't just appear in the world itself, but also erupted outside the world, passing on the signal of the ancient race's reappearance to the rulers of the great sun world. It was telling them that the ancient race that had been sealed and destroyed countless years ago had appeared once more. In the endless nothingness, there seemed to be a light sigh, one that was helpless but also a bit strange. The fluctuations that rapidly spread outwards seemed to be wiped away by an invisible hand, immediately vanishing from sight. At the highest peak of the world, amidst the terrifying astral winds, an eye that had just condensed before it could even open, burst open like a bubble. Chapter 666. After transforming into an ancient, Chinyu's aura suddenly rose. His feet stepped on the earth and his head rose into the heavens. His tall and imposing figure represented an absolutely tyrannical strength that couldn't be suppressed. His surging chi and blood were like raging waves, rolling and roaring in a rhythmic manner, setting off a series of rumbling noises between the heavens and earth. As if it could feel the complete aura of its clansmen, the undying true spirit that had summoned the ancient race ancestor began to fluctuate. It let out a deep roar as if it were chanting something, and the endless spiritual strength in the world began to boil once more. Compared to this, when Chinyu transformed into an ancient, the commotion he stirred up was like a small wave in a pond. It couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Rumble, rumble. His voice reverberated through the skies as billions of strands of spiritual energy gathered together and surged into the body of the ancient race, undying true spirit. Its body quickly solidified, as if it was about to walk out of the illusion and truly descend into the world. At the same time, the aura of the ancient race, undying true spirit, was skyrocketing, suppressing the entire world. Babesa screamed shrilly, Qin Yu, you madman! As a member of the ancient race, it was impossible for him not to know what would happen if he were to be exposed. Even so, they still wanted to destroy him. This was simply outrageous. Ah! With a roar, the pair of horns on Babassa's head turned even redder, tiny beads of blood seeping out of them. As soon as they came into contact with the air, or more precisely, with the rules of heaven and earth, the beads of blood on the surface of the horns began to burn violently with a muffled bang. Beneath the illumination of the crimson flames, Babassa's deathly pale complexion was revealed. The horns of demons were where their life essence gathered, and this blood occupied most of the strength Babassa had accumulated over the years. Once it was exhausted, he would inevitably fall back into a deep slumber. But in today's situation, Babassa had no other choice. With the power of the ancient race's true body, once he summoned the second sacred mountain, he would immediately be greatly suppressed. He raised a hand to cover the skies, and a massive shadow fell onto the earth. The ancient incarnation of Qin Yu punched out. With a loud bang, the entire space trembled violently. With the strength of an ancient's body, even 1,000 mountains could be easily smashed apart. Shattering space was even easier, but now it was incomparably difficult. It was as if this space had become different because it was so close to something. Break! The roar was even more terrifying than the thunder. The crazily trembling space suddenly split open. Within the darkness, there was a green divine light. This light penetrated the crack and shone into the world. An unimaginably terrifying pressure surged forth like a broken dam. Kacha! Kacha! In the blink of an eye, the sky above was covered with countless cracks like shattered ice. The second of the 3 sacred mountains of the ancient race, suppressing heavens. The green mountain looked like it was covered in some kind of moss from afar. It appeared bit by bit from the trembling space, and with every inch it entered the world, the pressure that descended became stronger. The blood flames on Babassa's horn burned even more fiercely as it resisted the suppressive strength that penetrated through countless layers of space. Crackle! Crackle! Within Babassa's body, the crackling of bones and flesh emitted the sound of exploding flesh and bones. His body expanded once more, and the blood vessels beneath his skin burst open one by one. Blood seeped out through the cracks in his scales, soaking through in the blink of an eye. The power of the sea-suppressing mountain and the heaven-suppressing mountain had sealed off 70% of the horn's escape route. The power in his body began to accumulate. Suddenly, there was a heaven-shaking explosion. As solitary Westgate controlled the endless thunder to bombard the skies, his blood-red eyes revealed an icy coldness. He looked at the Devil Overlord, his voice low and gloomy. For countless years, I have waited for the day when I could take revenge for my wife and child. No matter what happens, nothing can affect this. The methods of the demon race to control the hearts of others are terrifying, but I have not truly fallen into depravity. You want to absorb the power of thunder to restore yourself, so I will satisfy you. Then I will detonate them all. Now die. Solitary Westgate lifted a hand and pointed between his eyebrows. A lightning rune appeared. With this, the rune shattered. As if struck by thunder, Solitary Westgate's aura instantly weakened and blood wildly gushed out from his nose and mouth. He controlled the Thunder Kirin God Beast. Over the endless years, he had already reached great accomplishments in the path of thunder. The lightning rune between his eyebrows was the mark of thunder. Now, with the price of shattering this mark, he had awakened the power of thunder in the heavens and brought down endless destructive punishment. The Devil Overlord roared out in pain. The scales covering his body were instantly covered with thunder. The seemingly tiny arcs of lightning were a deep and brilliant purple, incomparably beautiful, but they contained a horrifying strength that could turn all to powder. Beneath the purple thunder, the Devil Overlord level scales lost their luster. Then they withered, broke apart, and fell off, revealing the charred flesh and blood beneath. Although this seemed slow, the truth was that in the blink of an eye, the Devil Overlord's body was covered with traces of raging thunder. And what was particularly terrifying was that after his mortal body suffered heavy damage, the strength gathered within his body became increasingly difficult to suppress. It was like a raging flood, wildly crashing against his mortal body. Once one surpassed their limits, a backlash would arrive. All techniques in this world had limits and restrictions. The demon race possessed the heaven-defying ability to plunder strength from the outside world and restore themselves, but they also had great flaws. If one surpassed their limits, the so-called backlash would mean death. Their body and soul would be destroyed, and all traces of themselves would be erased from the world. Babesa held in pain, fear in his eyes. It was because he knew how terrifying the consequences were that he couldn't allow it to happen. That damned solitary Westgate. He had deliberately pretended that his mind was being controlled and waited until this moment to attack. Thinking about this was useless. The Devil Overlord looked up into the skies and wildly howled. Rumble, rumble. With a deep rumbling sound, a vortex appeared between the thunderclouds in the skies. This vortex was incomparably black, as if it were filled with flowing ink. A cold, gloomy, annihilating, and slaughter aura exuded from this vortex. But to the Devil Overlord, this aura was indescribably helpful. Bathed in the aura of the black vortex, the scales on his body rapidly grew, and he recovered to his original state with just a single breath. His originally dispirited aura was like kerosene being poured into a flame, instantly surging with the potential to burn the heavens. He was even more formidable than when he was in perfect condition, but there wasn't the least bit of joy on the Devil Overlord's face. His aura was icy cold, and his voice, filled with killing intent, reverberated through the world. Today both of you will die. I swear on my life that I will draw out your souls and suppress them in the endless abyss. You will be attacked by the power of darkness for all eternity, and you'll struggle in pain and despair, never to be free for all of your generations to come. Roar, the Devil Overlord roared. Lightning wreaked havoc around his body, and he was torn apart. Puff, solitary Westgate, spat out a mouthful of blood. His aura fell to rock bottom, and he swayed, barely managing to maintain his figure. His field of vision darkened, and his vision blurred. But he could still feel that destructive aura howling towards him. In cold, ruthless. Brewing, tranquility, I'm sorry. With a bitter smile, solitary Westgate closed his eyes and waited for death to arrive. But at this time, there was a heaven-shaking explosion. Blood rained down, bringing with it a warm feeling that soaked his entire body. Solitary Westgate lifted a hand to wipe away the blood that covered his eyes. He looked up to see a towering figure standing in front of him. Now, one of his arms had been pierced through, and blood gushed out from the wound. But his figure remained firm like a mountain ridge, able to block out all wind and rain. A warm feeling rose in his heart. Solitary Westgate took a deep breath and said, "Chinyu, don't worry about me. If you can escape, then leave immediately." A Devil Overlord that had surpassed the peak had nearly touched upon the level of a great overlord. The strength that erupted from him was simply unparalleled. In the end, they had been defeated. Chapter 667. Solitary Westgate bitterly smiled. At this time, was there any meaning in asking this question? Chin, you seem to have already guessed what he was thinking, and didn't really need an answer. After asking, he whispered, "I also fear death, because there are far too many things in this world that I am unwilling to part with, and there are far too many things that I cannot let go of. But today, you and I can only place ourselves in a hopeless situation. If we succeed, there is no need for you to thank me for saving you. But if we fail, at least we can accompany each other on the road to the Yellow Springs." The Devil Overlord roared in anger. A terrifying aura gushed out from his body like an endless abyss, capable of swallowing all things in the world. "You have ruined my plans that I have prepared for tens of millions of years. All of my hard work and efforts have been wasted. You deserve to die. As he spoke his last word, the world froze over. This wasn't true ice, but all fluctuations were crushed by a formidable strength. It was like a great lake frozen in the middle of winter. Even though he had transformed into an ancient and was able to support the heavens and earth, as long as he was in this world, he would still be suppressed. Qin Yu's current situation was like a large fish struggling to survive in ice. Every tiny movement he made would cause the strength that filled the skies to crush him. Kacha! Kacha! In this absolute quiet environment, the tiny sound was particularly clear. This sound came from the space that had been torn open and also from Qin Yu's top body. Every inch of his flesh and blood was like a bowstring, erupting with the limit of his strength. He crossed his hands in front of him and formed a strange seal. His voice was filled with sorrow and sorrow. With the body of my ancient race, I opened the sacrificial pagoda. The ancient race's taboo technique required one to give up everything in a desperate battle. But opening the sacrificial pagoda meant 9 deaths and 1 life, moreover. The process was extremely painful, one that almost no one could withstand. Pale white flames erupted from Qin Yu's body. They were icy cold without the least bit of warmth. But strangely, they burned space until it distorted. In this distorted space, the phantom of a white pagoda appeared. At first, it was blurry and indistinct, giving off a sacred and magnificent feeling. But after it completely solidified and stabilized, one couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air as they looked at the white pagoda. This was because this was a pagoda of bones. The pagoda was formed from an incalculable number of bones, as if they were perfectly woven together by the hands of a grandmaster. There was not a single part that wasn't exquisite. Impossible, the demon overlord screamed. With your level of power, how could you summon the bone sacrificial pagoda? Stop right now. Otherwise, your soul will scatter and be devoured by the white bone pagoda. You'll never be able to escape. Qin Yu's body shivered. He felt as if 17 or 18 bamboo pipes were ruthlessly stabbing into his body and crazily sucking away his flesh and blood. In fact, what he was feeling right now was far more painful than he could describe. This was a terrifying torment that came from the inside out, one that even the soul couldn't avoid. But his expression remained calm. This was because Qin Yu wanted to live, and if he wanted to live, he first had to force himself to death. How could one overcome the crisis of life and death without suffering? But with only one person, the sacrifice was a bit lacking. Qin Yu lifted a hand and pointed a finger. A pale, white line of fire held out, instantly falling onto solitary Westgate's body. The pale white flames were like a great mouth that swallowed him up. Power! I need more power! Qin Yu opened his mouth and roared towards the white bone altar in the distorted space above his head. Bang! The pale white flames that wrapped around him seemed to receive some order. Like a stream of water, they drilled into Qin Yu's body through his head. At this moment, even with Qin Yu's state of mind, he still couldn't withstand it. His body tensed up and he emitted a shrill cry. As the pale white flames poured into his body, his aura began to rise at an astonishing rate. There were loud crackling sounds as his body began to expand at a speed visible to the naked eye. In fact, the speed at which his skin grew couldn't keep up with the expansion of his flesh and blood. This caused his skin to crack open and blood to flow everywhere. Die! Die for this overlord! Babesa howled. He couldn't stare blankly on as Qin Yu summoned the 3rd ancient race, Sacred Mountain. Otherwise, there would be no chance of him surviving today. Bang! Wild fluctuations of strength erupted, like a volcano, instantly igniting the void. Terrifying fluctuations were like tsunamis that swept through the world. The demon overlord lifted a hand and pressed down. The power of the endless abyss erupted. A giant demon head condensed in the void, its eyes trembling as it slowly opened. With a single glance, the world seemed to fall silent. It was like a picture had been paused, and then everything was annihilated. Qin Yu, who had transformed into an ancient, was in this still picture. It was like he was being suppressed by 1,000 mountains. His rapidly expanding body came to a sudden stop. But the crazy eruption of strength within his body didn't stop. With his mortal body as a medium, it violently collided with the suppressive strength. In that instant, massive tracts of flesh and blood disintegrated, turning into the finest powder. It was only because of the two formidable strengths that it maintained its original appearance. But this calm only lasted for an extremely short period of time. Dark red flowers of blood bloomed in the air. Countless pieces of flesh and blood, supported by a formidable strength, shot out in all directions. At this time, one could even clearly see the bones buried deep beneath the flesh and blood, as well as the shattered organs. At this time, the ancient that Chinyu had transformed into was like a horrifying skeleton covered in flesh and blood. The pain it produced was beyond imagination. It was enough to instantly shatter the will of all living beings. Once one's will collapsed, such a severe injury could cause any living being to die. Chin, you felt like a small boat in a storm. He could capsize at any moment and be swallowed up by the raging waves. I cannot die. I cannot die. Live live on. I want to live. The strength that descended from the sacrificial altar thoroughly activated Chin Yu's vitality. The flesh and blood hanging from his bones trembled and began to wildly grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. In several breaths of time, the ancient's body was restored. But this sort of reckless stimulation of vitality would leave behind serious consequences. But at this time, Chin Yu couldn't care about this. The more strength that descended from the sacrificial altar, the more terrifying the demands on him would be. Right now, he was withstanding a pain 10 times more terrifying than before. He could barely maintain a trace of clarity in his consciousness. As for how long he could last, he didn't have the slightest confidence. Perhaps in the next moment, his vision would turn black and he would never wake up again. With a trembling hand, he pointed towards the heavens. His 5 fingers grasped it and slowly pulled it downwards. Rumble, rumble. Winds and clouds stirred in the skies. An unimaginably terrifying aura filled the air. It was like a great sun in the skies had suddenly fallen down. In that instant, there was no longer any fluctuations in the world. All existences, whether they were living beings or not, whether they were real or illusory, were thoroughly suppressed. Chapter 668. With my source of darkness as a sacrifice, I summon the source of all devils. The devil overlord howled, his eyes turning crimson. No matter what, he wasn't willing to die like this. Even if his soul perished, he still wanted to drag Chin Yu down with him. The devil head condensed in the void and emitted a deep roar. It opened its mouth and sucked in, causing Babassa's body to wither away. He was like a corpse that had been sealed in a coffin for thousands of years. His skin was like withered wood, without the slightest bit of vitality. But his eyes were stubbornly round as he stared at Chin Yu's figure. He wanted to see Chin Yu fall into the depths of hell with him. After plundering all of Babassa's strength, the devil head's appearance rapidly changed. Flesh and blood bulged out from between the horns on its forehead. Then it split open and a third horn drilled out. Its entire body was pitch black, as if it were condensed from the deepest darkness in the world. Just by looking at it, one couldn't help but feel endless fear rise up from the depths of their soul. The taste of food is so wonderful. It has been a long time since I've seen this world. A deep and low voice came from the devil head's mouth. Although it wasn't fierce, it contained a strength that shook the world. This shaking produced invisible fluctuations that pushed the devil head's voice forward, instantly spreading throughout the entire immortal sect world. Mountains toppled over. Broken walls and rubble filled the air. A strange beast raced forwards amidst the collapsing mountains. Its 4 strong limbs allowed it to leap hundreds of miles with each leap. Its breathing carried with it the sound of wind and thunder. Every time it fell, the earth would collapse. It possessed an extremely formidable strength. But it was precisely such a terrifyingly powerful beast that was currently panicking like a stray dog. Suddenly, the exotic beast whipped its head around, looking at the empty space behind it. Its eyes widened, revealing endless fear. Its tyrannical and powerful body suddenly froze. It was like a frozen stone as it fell to the ground. The fear in its eyes showed that it was still alive and conscious, but it couldn't resist what was happening to its body at all. Its sparkling fur rapidly darkened. After losing all luster, it withered and turned yellow, charred black, and then shattered into pieces. Its exposed skin and rapidly withered flesh and blood were revealed. In the blink of an eye, this powerful strange beast had turned into a dried corpse. The city walls were majestic, and the buildings towered into the sky. From this, one could tell that this was an extremely flourishing city. But now it was in ruins everywhere. The city was torn apart by the cracks in the ground, and then it was crushed by the power that descended from the heavens. Amidst the ruins, the immortal sect cultivators howled in pain. The confidence and pride in their eyes had been thoroughly destroyed. All that was left was fear. Why was this happening? The incomparably powerful immortal sect that looked down on the world had actually fallen to such a state. God, let this nightmare pass quickly. Help us wake up. Suddenly, a deep and low voice came from the horizon. The immortal sect cultivators who were in pain and fear finally obtained relief. One by one, they fell to the ground like a piece of stone or a piece of wood, losing all their vitality. The long river broke apart and split into countless tributaries along the cracks on the ground. Giant fish were wrapped in the river water and swam forward with all their might. They didn't know what was in front of them, but they instinctively wanted to avoid the terrifying aura coming from behind them. Suddenly, the clear river became turbid and unclear. The large fish that swung their tails sank to the bottom one by one. They looked like pieces of tree bark that had been thrown into the river. On both sides of the river, the ancient trees that were alive toppled or broken. All of their leaves withered and turned yellow, as if they had been scorched by a raging inferno, losing all vitality. This scene appeared in almost every corner of the immortal sect world at the same time. When the origin of the devil arrived, that meant that all life in this world, and even the world itself, would welcome death. Beneath the three-horned abyssal head, a giant body began to condense. In the blink of an eye, it became a true abyssal that appeared in the world. Its breathing could easily corrode the world, causing the rules to collapse and be destroyed. A thick black fog lingered around its body, as if it had emerged from the 9 nether realms. Looking at Chinyu, the origin of the devil chuckled. "Lowly ant, in order to express my gratitude to you, I will accept your strength and make it a part of me. I will become one with the great abyss and exist in this prison for all eternity, never decaying or destroyed." With it as the center, darkness rapidly spread out in all directions. Wherever it went, everything was annihilated, turning into an endless night. Endlessly far away, across 1,000,000,000,000 miles of space, a condensed world was slowly growing. Although it was in an incomplete state, it still emitted a powerful aura that could suppress the world and look down on the highest heavens. Without a doubt, once this world was fully grown, its grade would be astonishing. Looking through the barriers of the world, between the blue skies and white clouds, a giant green leaf gently swayed. It was as delicate as a willow branch, but it constantly emitted a sharp aura that left one's mind trembling. Suddenly, this green leaf seemed to sense something. It tensed, like a sharp sword being drawn from its sheath. A terrifying aura instantly pierced through the endless skies. A spatial crack appeared. From here, it extended to the ends of one's line of sight, crossing an endless distance to arrive outside a towering divine palace. This divine palace was golden all over, like a golden sun that sat atop the earth. It emitted a light so bright that one couldn't look directly at it. The spatial crack vanished in the golden light. After several breaths of silence, A deep and low voice echoed out from within the towering divine palace. Star-cutting grass, I understand your intentions, but in today's situation, I cannot do anything. Otherwise, not only will I not be able to save him, but you, me, and even this world will be buried here. Schwa! Another crack arrived from the horizon. That's right. If I lose Chinyu, the chances of finding a suitable successor are slim to none. Even so, this is my only choice. This is something that cannot be changed. Schwa! A third crack appeared. The divine palace was silent for a long time. Then it slowly said, "The origin of the devil is born in the abyss. Even if it is only a projection, it has the strength to easily annihilate a spiritual god. Chinyu is doomed to find it difficult to escape this calamity. I guarantee you that if there is a day when I can restore my strength, I will definitely descend into the abyss and slaughter trillions of abyssal lives. I will bring down endless destruction and take revenge for Chinyu's death." The three cracks scattered. Beneath the great sun in the skies, the sound of wind passing through the leaves of the star-cutting grass became mournful, as if it were weeping. In the center of the divine palace, one could faintly make out a figure. He lowered his head and said in a soft voice, "This is the road you chose. I am sorry, but I cannot help you." Chapter 669. In the endless darkness, the ancient incarnation of Chinyu's blood energy violently shook, resisting the plundering of the origin of the devil. But the strength of the abyss was like ink. Once it was stained, it was impossible to get rid of. It followed Chinyu's blood energy fluctuations and corroded him. Like an eternal night, the darkness approached Chinyu step by step, wanting to drown him, assimilate him, and swallow him whole. Roar, roar, the ancient's roar was like a thunderclap. But it couldn't break through the imprisonment of the darkness. It came closer and closer, finally covering the body that supported the heavens. The world turned black, as if everything had come to an end. Ha ha ha. The mummified devil overlord emitted a sharp cackle. "Demon sovereign, you have finally died in front of me." But he didn't realize that there was no joy on the face of the origin of the devil. Instead, there was a bit of gloom on its face. Everything in the world was unpredictable and unpredictable. In a situation where one was completely unprepared, it would decisively smash into one's mind. A strange light appeared in the depths of the origin of the devil's eyes. After a long period of silence, it let out a deep breath and muttered, "I never thought that in such a remote and wild land I would encounter someone with the bloodline of this race. Although it is only half and incomplete, it is still a member of this race." The origin of the devil didn't say the other half. Since it was a member of this race, it wouldn't die like this. Just as its voice fell, the darkness that flooded the world ruptured without warning. A terrifying aura erupted like a volcano. Chinyu's body returned to its original size. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and dark, golden runes wove together on his face. His eyes turned a light gray, and an extremely cruel and callous aura flowed out. It was like even if the world collapsed in front of him, it wouldn't shake his mind in the least. Looking up at the origin of the devil, Chinyu stepped forward and punched out. It was impossible to describe the might of this punch. It seemed to come straight at him, but it was like a falling star, carrying with it an absolute strength that could easily destroy all. It was vast and boundless, impossible to dodge, impossible to resist, impossible to block. At this moment, the world fell into a deathly silence. Then, like a mirror, it quietly shattered and split apart. The cracks pierced through the origin of the devil incarnation, through the wide-eyed Babesa, and even through the world behind them. Everything was shattering, tumbling, continuously being destroyed, and finally disappearing into nothingness. This punch seemed to exhaust all of his strength. Chinyu closed his eyes and fell backwards. The dark, golden runes that wove around his face rapidly faded away. Then dark gray lines appeared on the surface of Chinyu's body, like a spiderweb before submerging into his body. The pale and thin solitary Westgate rushed over and held him in his arms. He looked at Chinyu with shock in his eyes and then tore through space to escape. In the distant world, in the majestic palace that looked like a golden sun, the shocked figure let out a long breath. That clan actually has a bloodline that wandered outside. No wonder I didn't sense it before. With the methods of that clan, if they decided to seal away Chinyu, who could possibly sense it? However, since you've sealed Chinyu, why don't you just kill him? This clan values the purity of their bloodline very much. He fell into silence once more, as if he were thinking about something. Whatever, there must be a secret behind this. I wasn't part of it, and it also involves that clan, so it's impossible to divine anything. But today's matters have finally solved a riddle in my heart. Chinyu, I fear your surname isn't Chin. Beneath the great sun in the white clouds, the star cutting grass happily jumped about. Its giant leaves swept through space, cutting open cracks. The wind brought with it its cheers. Ah! A pained howl sounded out from deep within the eternal darkness, demonic region. Vast swathes of darkness shook like a tide, emitting loud, rumbling sounds. Shwa! Sitting cross-legged in the darkness, the dark knight divine Seat's eyes flashed open. His pupils violently shrank until they turned vertical. Chinyu! Chinyu! Repressed roars constantly echoed through the hall. The Qin Empire's emperor had perished, and the immortal sect world had collapsed. In a single day, it was like a divine stone had crashed into the sea, causing great waves to sweep through the land of divinity and demons. No one expected that the situation would suddenly undergo such a terrifying change. The demonic path that had fallen into decline would actually be able to decide everything in a single battle. The name of the demonic path's holy sovereign, Chinyu, was like the rising sun in the skies. The Yen and Qi empires were instantly thrown into chaos. After confirming that the immortal sect had become history, the two countries didn't hesitate to form an alliance with the Chu Empire. The Han and Wei empires followed close behind, becoming members of the alliance. Many other influences that were attached to the immortal sect and were enemies of the demonic path also joined in. Finally, an alliance was formed with the 5 empires at the head. The Qin Empire was destroyed, and its territory was transferred to the Zhao Empire. After experiencing the death of an army of 3 million, the Zhao Empire's territory surpassed the Chu Empire in a single stroke, becoming the largest country in the land of divinity and demons. The various influences attached to the demonic path began to rapidly expand their influence. Even though the 5 empires were powerful, they were still at a disadvantage when facing them. The reason was simple. No one wanted to draw out the terrifyingly strong demon sovereign. Luckily, the demonic path didn't seem to have any thoughts of unifying the world in a short period of time. After a period of collision, the situation gradually eased. What the 5 empires didn't know was that the Qin they feared and feared had fallen into a deep slumber after the immortal sect was destroyed, and he still hadn't woken up. Time passed like flowing water. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. Yu Qi looked at Qin, who was still lying on the bed. Besides the slight rise and fall of his chest, he seemed to have lost all signs of life. She covered her mouth, tears sparkling in her eyes. "Your Majesty, it has already been a year, and not only have you not woken up, but your aura has become even weaker. I cannot wait any longer. I can only listen to the Tao Arena Master's suggestion and give it my all. I hope that my decision is correct. If anything happens to your Majesty, I will accompany you on the road to the Yellow Springs." After wiping away her tears and leaving the hall, Yu Qi's expression had already returned to normal. Besides her slightly red eyes, there wasn't the least bit of emotion to be seen. She bowed. "I will leave everything to the 2 lords." Beneath the dark gold mask, her eyes were dignified. "Dark concubine, rest assured that I will do my best." Solitary Westgate took a deep breath. "Since we have made a decision, let's not delay any further." With Qin Yu's current condition. It is best to act sooner rather than later. Yu Qi turned and drew back to the side. She took a deep breath and said, I will wait here for His Majesty to come out. Solitary Westgate frowned. From these words, he could sense a sense of determination. He feared that if something really did happen to Qinyu, this dark concubine would immediately follow him. But in this world, emotions were the most difficult to understand. After a moment of hesitation, Solitary Westgate didn't say anything. He nodded and stepped into the palace with Yama. Rumble, rumble. Chapter 670. Holy Emperor Palace, Main Hall. Solitary Westgate looked at the increasingly weak Qinyu lying on the bed. He said in a low voice, All right, let's begin. He lifted a hand and pointed a finger. Ripples rose up in space, like the surface of a lake being blown apart. They spread outwards until they covered the entire hall. These spatial ripples had a formidable imprisoning ability. They completely isolated the outside world from sensing them. Beneath Yama's dark gold mask, her eyes brightened. Her aura rapidly rose, and her dress fluttered in the wind. She was like a goddess descending to the world. She lifted a hand. The samsara grindstone appeared between her slender fingers. It slowly spun, emitting deep rumbling sounds. This feeling was like there was a formidable suppressive strength placed on the grindstone. Every inch it turned required a tremendous amount of strength. Tao Arena Master, even if we combine our strength, the soul summoning can only last for 2 hours. If His Majesty the Demon Sovereign cannot wake up, if he couldn't wake up, then he would never wake up again. He would fall into eternal slumber. Solitary Westgate had a dignified expression. I believe that he will definitely wake up. From what he saw, Qinyu was destined to be a dazzling existence, an existence that illuminated the highest heavens and 10 earths. How could he possibly die like this? Yama nodded. The samsara grindstone spun faster between her fingers. In a state of obstruction, a loud rumbling sound erupted. A beam of light shot out from the samsara grindstone. It was black and white and covered Qinyu's body. It was a long dream. Qinyu was deeply immersed in it. No matter how he struggled, he couldn't wake up. In the dream, he was born in a massive courtyard and his status seemed extremely noble. But for some unknown reason, he couldn't clearly see the faces of anyone in the dream, including the man and woman that he should call his parents. He was in the dream, but he was also like an isolated spectator. Moreover, the entire dream only lasted from when he was born to when he was 4 years old, constantly repeating itself. Over and over again, Qinyu's initial curiosity gradually turned into restlessness. This was because, as the dream repeated itself, it became increasingly blurry. Originally, it was just the faces that couldn't be clearly seen. The sounds and surrounding scenes were all clear, but gradually the sounds disappeared and the scenes in the dream began to distort. He even saw with his own eyes a person that appeared in the dream be swallowed up by the distorted and shattered space. From then on, no matter how Qinyu searched, he couldn't find the existence of this person in his repeated dreams. Thus, he concluded that the person in the dream that had been swallowed by the collapsing dream world had completely disappeared. Qinyu wasn't sure what this news meant, but he could instinctively feel an icy cold and cruel aura from it. If he was swallowed by the collapsing dreamscape, he would probably end up the same way, but that would not mean that he would wake up from the dream. The dreamland world became increasingly unstable. Even the giant residence began to break apart. Qinyu was trapped in one of the fragments. He tried everything he could to leave, but in the end he failed. Am I going to die in this strange dream? Standing in the courtyard, Qinyu looked down at his own hand that had shrunk to the size of a child's, his voice bitter. Suddenly, a loud rumbling sound entered his ears. He didn't care at first, because in the shattered dreamland world, similar sounds would often be emitted as space collapsed. But soon he noticed that something was different, because the voice wasn't coming from the surroundings, but from above his head. Qinyu fiercely looked up. In the distorted and shattered skies, the phantom of a spinning black, grinding disk was faintly discernible. Samsara! Qin Yu was overjoyed. He focused his divine sense and soon determined that the grinding disk wasn't something that had evolved from the dreamland world. Faint traces of a pulling force were released from the samsara, grinding disk in the skies. After sensing Qin Ning's existence, it rapidly gathered towards him. His consciousness shook. Qin Yu wasn't startled, but rather overjoyed. This was because he knew that the samsara grinding disk was helping his consciousness escape from this strange dreamland. A transparent Qin Yu emerged from the dreamland child's body. But at this time, the child emitted a pain scream. In the next moment, his eyes turned gray. A childish and icy voice sounded out from his mouth. "This is your home. If you don't stay here, where will you go?" He lifted a hand and grabbed Qin Yu's transparent figure. A bone-chilling aura spread out, rapidly corroding his body. Hum! Hum! The pulling force that wrapped around Qin Yu seemed to be corroded, rapidly weakening. Even the spinning samsara grinding disk in the skies above began to be covered in a layer of white frost. It seemed as if it would be completely frozen by the ice-cold strength that invaded Qin Yu's body. Holy Emperor Palace. Within the grand hall, the temperature crazily fell. Lying on the bed, Qin Yu's body began to turn white. Standing to the side, solitary Westgate and Yama were stimulating the samsara grinding disk with all their strength. Their complexions changed at the same time. They could clearly feel that the absolutely cold aura was like a venomous snake slithering in the darkness, drilling into their bodies. "This is bad." Solitary Westgate spat out a mouthful of blood. This blood didn't fall to the ground. Instead, it began to burn in the air. Within the blood flames, a rune appeared. It released a blood-red light that covered him and Yama. The ice-cold aura that invaded their bodies was immediately suppressed. But whether it was solitary Westgate or Yama, there wasn't the least bit of joy on their faces. This was because, at this time, the rune that emerged from the blood flames was trembling at an astonishing rate. Kacha! Kacha! Light sounds constantly emitted from the rune. Countless cracks began to appear on its surface. Pa! The rune shattered. From the moment it appeared to the moment it ended, it lasted for less than 3 breaths of time. Solitary Westgate stuffily coughed. Blood flowed out from the corners of his lips. Before this blood even dripped onto the ground, it turned pitch black. Within the grand hall, the sound of wind suddenly stirred up. As it howled, it revealed an icy cold sharpness. It was like in the endless nothingness, a pair of icy cold eyes had already locked onto the two of them. Yama said in a low voice, "Dowarina Master, His Majesty the Demon's Sovereign has other plans. I fear we have provoked trouble." Solitary Westgate clenched his teeth. "Since things have come to this, we cannot give up. Otherwise, today will be the day Qin Yu dies." Yama bitterly smiled. "Even if you and I persist, how long can we last?" Solitary Westgate took a deep breath. "I will not give up until I reach my limit. I still believe that Qin Yu will not die like this." Within the grand hall, the temperature continued to fall. What was frozen was not the flesh and blood body, but the soul and consciousness hidden within. In the dreamland world, Qin Yu's consciousness turned his head. As his eyes met the young child's, his heart began to race. This was because this young child looked exactly like him when he was a child. Could it be that this was really his childhood? Chapter 671. The child's eyes were gray and white, and his face was filled with indifference that didn't match his age. His entire being seemed to be born from the accumulation of 1,000,000,000,000 resentments, completely incompatible with the world around him. He looked at Qin Yu and slowly repeated, "This is your home. If you don't stay here, where will you go?" Feeling the icy cold aura constantly invading his body, Qin Yu knew that it was impossible for him to escape. After a brief silence, Qin Yu landed on the ground. He stood across from the child and earnestly looked at him. "Are you me?" This question was strange, filled with absurdity and incredulity. But the child nodded without hesitation, confirming this without a doubt. Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows. "Can you tell me why you appeared here? What sort of place is this manor in this dream?" The child lightly said, "This is your home and I am you. I should naturally stay at home." Qin Yu said in a low voice, "Do you want to stay at home or do others want you to?" The child said, "Is there a difference?" Although he didn't answer, he had already given him the answer. No matter how Qin Yu tried to recall, his childhood memories didn't seem to exist at all in the past. He thought that it was because he was in too much pain that his body subconsciously chose to forget. But now, it seemed that things weren't as simple as he thought. One big and one small, the two people faced each other in silence. But time didn't stop. In the Dreamland Manor, it began to break apart piece by piece. It was like a jigsaw puzzle that was being broken apart. With the two people in the courtyard as the center, it began to collapse and disintegrate from the edges. Then it fell into eternal darkness, as if its life had been exhausted and it would be better to die in the end. Qin Yu's pupils shrank. He had a premonition that once this darkness spread and swallowed him up, death would arrive. The child muttered, "Everything should end now." He closed his eyes, giving off a feeling of relief, as if he had put down a great burden on his mind. "Kacha! Kacha! Kacha!" The broken dreamland world collapsed. There was no earth-shaking momentum or sound, but when that tiny sound entered one's ears, it was even more terrifying. Qin Yu was also afraid, but he knew that at this moment, fear had no effect on him. Taking a deep breath, he looked at himself in front of him. His childish facial features were filled with the vicissitudes of life. It was as if he had experienced countless sufferings and was filled with disgust towards the entire world amidst the pain and torment. Qin Yu was well aware that the reason he had fallen into this hopeless situation was because of this world-weary little figure in front of him. But at the same time, his only chance of survival was also with this himself. "I don't know what you've experienced or why you're here, determined to kill your future self, but I want to tell you that I'm not willing to die like this. No, to be more precise, I firmly believe that I can live on to recover the memories I lost when I was young. And perhaps you have." These words seemed to touch the child's heart. He suddenly opened his eyes, and the grayish-white color in them became even more intense. A chill flowed out from between the lines. "Do you think that having these memories is a wonderful thing?" The surface of Qin Yu's translucent body was instantly covered in frost. A bone-chilling cold stabbed into his body like iron needles, bringing with it endless pain. But joy rose in his heart. The little child just now was clearly prepared to welcome the arrival of death. Only by angering him and stirring up his emotions would he be able to find a chance to change his mind. "Even if those memories aren't beautiful, they belong to me, so no one can take them away. And even if they do, they must return them to me untouched and pay the price for doing so." The little child coldly sneered. "How childish! Do you think you're already very strong right now? In their eyes, you are nothing more than a strong ant. An ant will always be an ant. No matter how strong you are, they can still easily crush you with a finger." He looked at Qin Yu, his gray eyes revealing a penetrating light as if he could see through everything. "I know you want to move me, but give up. Wait here for your death to arrive and put an end to all of this preposterous nonsense." Qin Yu's heart shrank. He knew that this was his last chance. If he couldn't move the little child, he would inevitably welcome death. He roared out loud, "Since you want me to willingly welcome death, then why do you want me to experience the same dreamland over and over again? Or, let me explain it even more clearly. Why do you want me to live for so long?" If the goal of this strange dreamland was to kill him, then it could have been done from the start and there was no need to wait until now. Then there must be an accident in the repeated dreamland, and this accident could only be the little child in front of him. Chin, you couldn't figure out why the little child would send him to his death in the end if he had helped him live. The little child had no expression. You think too much. He closed his eyes, no longer speaking. Chin Yu's heart was heavy. Had he failed? Or perhaps he had guessed wrong. But thinking about these things was meaningless. Looking at the dreamland fragments that were constantly disintegrating in all directions, Chin Yu stepped forwards. Perhaps you have already accepted your fate and no longer wish to struggle. But that doesn't mean I will die because of this. This world is too vast, and I have never seen it all. This world is so beautiful, and I have countless things I care about. I will not die. I absolutely will not. Bang! As if he had struck an invisible barrier, Chin Yu's translucent body fiercely trembled. It twisted and rippled. Within these ripples, his body became increasingly transparent, as if he had lost a part of his strength. But Chin Yu didn't stop. He continued to attack the barrier. Bang, bang. A low and deep sound spread through the shattered dreamland. It echoed again and again, as if it would never stop. But this sound was weakening little by little. This was because Chin Yu's body was becoming increasingly transparent, like a faint shadow that could vanish at any moment. But his eyes remained firm. Even though the invisible barrier in front of him didn't tremble because of his strikes, it didn't shake at all. Again and again. Even though he knew there was no hope, he still wouldn't give up in the moment before death arrived. At some unknown time, the little child opened his eyes. His gray eyes looked at Chin Yu, who was like a moth flying into a flame. A complex look gradually appeared on his indifferent face. Even so, he didn't change his mind. There were many people in this world with tenacious and unyielding wills. But so what? Chapter 672. But at this time, the child's expression suddenly changed. He stared at Chin Yu as if he had discovered something. The aura of the blazing sun, it's actually the aura of the blazing sun. This feeling, can't be wrong, can't be wrong. Suddenly a ball of flame exploded in the empty, deathly still eyes. It was as if it had been ignited in the middle of a cold winter night. It spread wildly in all directions, as if it wanted to ignite the entire world. Those flames were filled with shock and excitement. However, even more than that, there was a hatred that was carved into their bones and could never be erased. He remembered everything that had happened back, then very clearly. The cold and indifferent eyes on the two divine thrones, as well as the cruel and merciless final judgment. His aura swallowed the world, blazing like a great sun, because that person was a supreme existence that wielded the power of a blazing sun. It was precisely because of this that he was willing to accept his fate and give up all attempts at revenge, because what he had to face was a peak that he could never surmount. Standing in front of him, there was only fear and reverence, as well as a tremor that came from the bottom of their hearts. But now, the child could feel a similar aura from Chin Yu's body. Although it was incomparably weak, there was no mistaking it. Without the approval of the blazing sun, just being touched by it would cause one to be burnt into nothingness. Their soul and marrow would forever vanish from the world. Ha ha! The toddler suddenly laughed. His tender voice was the complete opposite of the complicated and intense emotions in his voice. While it made people feel strange, they could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. The matters of the world are truly wondrous and unfathomable. When I was willing to give up everything and bring my past to hell, the heavens actually allowed me to see everything before my eyes. Since that's the case, how can I die? The blazing sun stands proudly above the 9 heavens and looks down on the world. Let us wait and see if there will be a day in the future when a new blazing sun will be born and the old one will fall. I am destined not to see that scene, but when it really happens, I will definitely be able to revive in the depths of my memories. Everything that happened in the past will never pass, never. The toddler reared back his head and screamed. A terrifying strength erupted from his tiny body. This strength was so great that it instantly suppressed the rapidly collapsing dreamland world. Ka-cha! Ka-cha! A series of sounds rang out above his head, and cracks appeared out of nowhere. More and more cracks appeared, and they continued to spread outwards. The invisible barrier that trapped Chinyu was shattering. Crimson lava flowed on the ground with no end in sight. It was like a vast ocean at the center of the earth. The air was filled with a terrifyingly high temperature, enough to instantly incinerate any living being that trespassed into nothingness. In the center of this vast ocean, in the place where the temperature was the most astonishing, a majestic divine palace quietly stood. It was built from giant pieces of stone. Perhaps it was because it had withstood the terrifyingly high temperature, but every piece of stone that made up the divine palace was emitting an incomparably blazing light. This scene made one feel as if a sun had fallen and transformed into this divine palace, creating this boundless sea of lava. Suddenly, the silent divine palace came to life. The tranquil sea of magma began to violently tumble about, emitting soul-shaking roars. In the center of the divine palace, at the source of all light and heat, a pair of eyes slowly opened. Unlike the scorching heat of the outside world, it was icy cold inside. This was a pair of incomparably beautiful and narrow eyes. They were like two stars, able to make one feel endless beauty. But the icy cold they contained was enough to cause all living beings in the world to feel fear, or perhaps they didn't even have the chance to feel fear. When they saw these eyes, they had already fallen into destruction. "You haven't died yet." A calm, gentle voice resounded in the fiery divine palace. Every word was filled with an unparalleled will. In this world, there was a transcendent existence that could be called law with a single word. To put it simply, if they wanted you to die, you would undoubtedly die. The master of this flame divine palace, hidden deep within the sea of magma, just happened to be one of them. Holy Emperor Palace. Standing in front of the bed, solitary Westgate and Yama, who were resisting the icy cold that seeped into their bones and souls, widened their eyes. An inexplicable fear rose up in their hearts without warning. In the next moment, the space in front of Chinyu twisted. Within this distorted space, a pair of eyes appeared. They were slender and beautiful. Just looking at them caused one to instinctively think of countless beautiful words. But the icy cold within revealed a callousness that even if 1,000,000,000,000 lives were exterminated in the world, it wouldn't be able to shake them in the least. Puff, puff, solitary Westgate and Yama both spat out a mouthful of blood. Their hearts were filled with shock. This was just a pair of eyes, yet the phantom had directly wounded them. Moreover, it was clear that the target of these eyes was Chinyu, who was lying on the bed. The damage it did to them could only be considered collateral damage. But it was because of this that they were all the more terrified. Just the shock waves from this pair of eyes were enough to roll over supreme being of the world. Just how powerful was the owner of this pair of beautiful eyes? They were an existence that surpassed all imagination. Dreamland world. The young child seemed to sense something. A formidable strength erupted from his body, rising once more. On his young face, his eyes stubbornly stared at the heavens. He roared out, "It's you! It's you!" A pair of giant eyes appeared in the shattered vault of heaven. It quietly stared at the small and large Chinyu. Not a single ripple in its eyes. But some invisible, yet formidable will had already arrived. The stagnant dreamland world began to break apart once more, and at an even faster speed. In the blink of an eye, it arrived at the fragment where the young child and Chinyu were. Besides this place, the entire dreamland had fallen into absolute darkness. It was like a bottomless abyss that could swallow and annihilate all. Ha 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 ha, you want to kill us? Is it because you feel threatened? I won't let you succeed. I absolutely won't. In terms of pure strength, you can crush the heavens and earth and radiate light throughout ancient times. But this is a dreamland, a cage that has imprisoned me for countless years, and also my domain. In my domain, even Yorwell can't kill me. Just you wait, one day I'll stand before you again and take back everything you did to me in the past. The young child revealed a crazed expression. His body began to burn, but the blood-red flames didn't contain any heat at all. Bang! Like an exploding nuclear bomb, it formed a visible impact of blood-red energy. It swept out in all directions like a tsunami, submerging the giant eyes. At the same time, an invisible bubble wrapped around Yu's nearly transparent figure. Beneath the impact of the blood-red energy, he instantly left the dreamland world. Chapter 673. Within the sea of magma, within the divine palace that seemed like a falling sun, the master of those beautiful eyes suddenly closed her eyes. After several breaths of time, a faint sigh echoed through the hall. Is this fate that cannot be changed? As I thought, the will of the heavenly Tao cannot be replaced if my race is destined to suffer twists and turns. Then I will wait for that day to come. She lifted a hand, and a mass of flames appeared. It rapidly shrank, condensing into a jade slip. The space around the jade slip trembled, swallowing it up like waves. On this day, the will of the supreme blazing sun spread through the entire race. It contained only a single message. A great upheaval was coming. There was an incomparably massive celestial body, as if it were formed from dozens of stars fused together. It was so massive that it cast a massive shadow on the back of the endless starry skies. On the sunny side of the celestial body, there was a mountain range that stretched out like a crouching dragon. A boundless aura flooded the world, and massive palaces and buildings sat atop the mountain range. In a grand hall at the head of the dragon, hundreds of figures were gathered. They sat on wide stone chairs, each one with a dignified expression. Everyone knows of the Lord's will. It seems that the matter we worried about the most has finally occurred. A deep and low voice echoed through the hall, emitting an endless oppressive pressure. The master of the voice wore a blazing sun robe, and his long red hair was like burning flames. I knew that scourges could not be allowed to live. We should have killed them all in the past to eliminate any future troubles. Tarnishing the bloodline of our race is indeed a capital crime, but her status is too special. You and I both agreed to it in the past. Arguing about this is useless. Since the Lord has given us a warning, there will surely be a storm in the future for our race. With the Lord here, who in the entire world dares to touch our race, even if that scourge hasn't died, he still won't be able to stir up any waves. The red-haired old man gently moved his walking stick. With a dull, thumping sound, the hall immediately fell silent. Our race has the protection of the blazing sun. Even after billions of years, we will not wither away. But if we can avoid this unexpected storm, that would be for the best. I propose that we send out the clan cleaners to search the entire world and find the source of that disaster and kill him. I agree. Demonic path, small world. Holy Emperor Palace. You leaned against a soft couch, a soft blanket covering his body. His face was pale and his aura was weak. Across from him, solitary Westgate opened his eyes. His complexion was dignified. Just what did you experience while you were unconscious? To actually weaken his soul to such an extent that it's on the verge of collapse. Yu smiled and shook his head. There are some things that I haven't figured out yet, so don't ask too much. In the dream, his younger self wanted to kill him, as well as that pair of indifferent, cruel, and extremely beautiful eyes. He really couldn't figure out what was hidden within. Solitary Westgate shook his head. He looked at Yu and sighed. Just how many more secrets do you have on your body? Saying these words meant that he no longer wanted to inquire any further. But there was one point that solitary Westgate was aware of. There was definitely some heaven-shaking secret hidden on Yu's body. In the distorted space, the pair of eyes that appeared and the aura that was released was simply unimaginably powerful. Even thinking about it now, cold sweat would appear on his body. That was definitely a power that did not belong to this world. Yu took a deep breath. All right, let's get down to business. With my current injuries, how long will it take for me to recover? Solitary Westgate knew what he was thinking. After several breaths of silence, he furrowed his eyebrows and said, "You should be the clearest about how injured your soul is. If you want to recover, it won't be something that can be accomplished overnight. Moreover, the most difficult point is that your soul cannot withstand a strength that is too strong. Otherwise, not only will it be useless, but it will instead bring you great harm." Chinyu slowly said, "You mean that I cannot borrow external strength and can only let my soul recover on its own?" Seeing Solitary Westgate nod, Chinyu's complexion darkened. Just as Solitary Westgate said, he was well aware of his own injuries. Without any external help, if Chinyu wanted to recover from his soul injuries, he would need to spend at least several dozen years, or perhaps even longer. To a calamity immortal realm cultivator, several dozen years or even several hundred years weren't anything at all. A long period of seclusion was much longer than that. But Chinyu was different. Ningling had borrowed the power of darkness to temporarily delay the arrival of death. At most, she could maintain this for 200 years. He didn't have much time to waste on his soul injuries. "Westgate, is there any way for me to recover?" "No." Chinyu shook his head. "I don't believe you," Solitary Westgate said in a low voice. "Chinyu, I know what you are thinking, but I must remind you that as long as you are alive, there is a chance that Ningling will wake up. If something happens to you, no one will be able to save her. You must always remember this." Chinyu lightly said, "If you are so excited, then it must be because you really do have a way to help me recover from my soul injuries. It doesn't matter if you don't want to tell me. As the demonic path's holy sovereign, as long as I want to, I will definitely be able to find it." He closed his eyes. "Westgate, you should understand. In this world, there will always be one or two people that you are willing to pay any price to cherish, protect, and save. To you, your sister-in-law and nephew are like that. To me, Ningling is also like that. I won't force you to tell me the method, but I will definitely find out. It is only a matter of time." Solitary Westgate's complexion darkened. He roared out, "That's right, Your Majesty the Saint Sovereign is wise and perceptive. There is indeed a method in this world that can restore your soul injuries to their original state in a short period of time. This method is called ashes to ashes. It is like a campfire that has been lit and the last bit of heat is stimulated. Although it can be exchanged for a moment of light and heat, when it reaches its end, it will usher in eternal annihilation. Chinyu, this is all I have to say. As for what choice you make, that is for you to decide. I only hope that you can remain calm and not regret it." Solitary Westgate flicked his sleeves and left, his back blazing with anger. Chinyu watched him leave with a light expression. He knew that Solitary Westgate was only angry because they were friends. If it were someone unrelated to him, who would care about his life or death? "Westgate, you and I walk the same path. Since you already know my choice, why do you need to be so annoyed? Ashes to ashes? The name is quite sad, but in my life, my luck has never been bad. I cannot wait, but I will not die either." As Chinyu said, with the reputation of the demonic path's Saint Sovereign, obtaining the jade slip containing the ashes to ashes secret method was a simple matter. Yuchi arrived in front of the soft couch. She looked at the jade slip on the round table. After several breaths of silence, she reached out a hand and covered Chinyu with the blanket. "Your Majesty, I will not stop your decision. I only hope that Your Majesty can take care of yourself. Don't forget that besides Big Sister, you also have a woman." Chinyu opened his eyes, guilt in them. "Yuchi, I have let you down." Yuchi shook her head. Tears flowed down her cheeks as she leaned against him. "I don't want to hear it. As long as Your Majesty is safe and sound, I don't care about anything else." Chinyu lifted a hand and stroked her dark hair. "Don't worry. I promise you that nothing will happen." A deep light flashed in the depths of his eyes. He had already memorized the ashes to ashes secret method. Even if he could restore his injuries, he wouldn't be able to maintain it for too long. Before he exhausted his soul force, he had to find a way to save Ningling and himself. Qin Yu didn't know whether or not he could do it, but he knew that he had no other choice. Chapter 674. For days after solitary Westgate left the demonic path small world, he returned. He tossed a blood-stained jade, slipped to Qin Yu, and gloomily turned to leave. He returned to his residence, fell into his bed, and immediately fell into a deep sleep. This world was far too large. It had experienced trillions of years, and through the changes of time, there were countless large and small secrets hidden within. Even the supreme beings of this world didn't dare to underestimate it. This jade slip came from a desperate situation in the land of divinity and demons. Even with solitary Westgate's cultivation, he still had to pay a considerable price to obtain it. In particular, his current state was far from being restored to its peak. Qin Yu looked at it. The jade slip hadn't dried up yet, and instead maintained a potent amount of blood. It was clear that its master was an extremely tyrannical existence. A touch of emotion appeared in his eyes, but Qin Yu didn't say anything. Some things were best kept in mind. Suppressing these thoughts, he probed the jade slip with his divine sense. There wasn't the least bit of information within. Instead, an icy cold aura gushed out like flowing ice water. It poured into his mind, making his thoughts clear and bright. This icy cold aura automatically condensed into tiny runes that could only be sensed by the soul. They were like stars in the night sky, decorating his soul space. Runes appeared one after another, increasing in number. There didn't seem to be any pattern to them, but within his soul space the temperature began to gradually fall. This so-called temperature was only a description. To be more precise, it was a powerful, imprisoning aura. It wasn't a restraining or suppressing aura, but a layer of isolation. It was like a flame needing to come into contact with air in order to burn. Similarly, with this layer of isolation, the speed at which Qin Yu's soul force burned would be greatly reduced. Qin Yu opened his eyes, a bit of joy in them. With this imprisonment, he could last for at least another 10 years. If he didn't recklessly use his soul force, he might be able to last even longer. He stood up and left. First, he looked at solitary Westgate's condition. He was still in a deep sleep. Although his aura was a bit weak, it wasn't too much of a problem. After a good night's sleep and some rest, he should be able to recover. Qin Yu looked up at the bright skies and revealed a thoughtful look. Before solitary Westgate woke up, he could make other preparations ahead of time. He stepped out and appeared in Yu Qi Palace. He smiled at her and said, "I'll bring you to see some acquaintances." Grabbing her, he moved and arrived within the sphere of influence of the Dark Night demon region. His divine sense broke out from his body and swept out, instantly locking onto a familiar aura. However, Qin Yu looked up towards the depths of the Dark Night demon region. There was a deep darkness there that was as thick as ink and emitted an icy cold aura. Without a doubt, this darkness should be where the Dark Night divine seat went into seclusion. He didn't know why, but he could feel a trace of ruthlessness here. He frowned and looked deeply into the darkness. Then he flicked his sleeves, and the rules around him twisted, completely concealing his and Yu Qi's auras. In the darkness, the goddess of the night closed her eyes, concealing the hatred in them. Ashes and ashes. Qin Yu, you absolutely cannot die early. I will personally take revenge for everything you have done, the low growl echoed in the darkness. In a dim hall, Shan Wugu's eyes flashed open. As he saw two people emerge from the spatial fluctuations in front of him, his eyes lit up with excitement. Taking a deep breath, he stood up and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, sacred emperor and sacred consort." A gentle strength gushed out from the void and supported him. He smiled. "There's no need to be so careful. No one will discover that I came to see you." Shan Wugu's lips moved, but in the end he didn't say anything. He nodded a bit awkwardly. Even though they had once been best friends, with the passage of time, circumstances had changed. The massive disparity in status was something that no one could ignore. Qin Yu could understand this. He sighed inwardly, his smile unchanged. Potato, we cannot stay here for long. The reason I came to see you today is to bid our farewells. A moment later, Qin Yu brought Yu Qi away. Shan Wugu stood in the hall, a pitch-black jade archive in his hands. Potato! Potato! Qin Yu, thank you. You will forever be my brother, no matter where you go. I hope everything goes smoothly for you. Qin Yu met Yu Qi's gaze and rubbed his temples. I will definitely explain everything to you. Can you wait a moment? Yu Qi nodded, but her faintly furrowed eyebrows revealed the worry in her heart. With a wave of his hand, Qin Yu tore open space and brought Yu Qi in. Their destination this time was the land of exiles on the other end of the Endless Sea region. Within Immortal Eclipse Valley, Guling, Er's eyes widened. Big brother Qin Yu. With a cheer, she threw herself into his arms like a swallow returning to its nest. Qin Yu smiled. This time, Big Brother will bring you to the land of divinity and demons. 2 days later, Guling, Pill Crucible, Daoist Wang, Jiangli, and the others all followed Qin Yu into the small world of the demonic path. After the destruction of the immortal sect, looking at the entire land of divinity and demons, the demonic path was invincible. Even with the Chu Empire as the leader of the 5 countries, they could only remain passive. Now that they arrived, there was no longer any danger. After everyone was settled, solitary Westgate finally awoke. He opened his eyes and saw Qin Yu brewing tea in his room. He frowned and slowly sat up. What do you plan on doing next? Qin Yu didn't stop brewing tea. He lightly said, as you think. Solitary Westgate let out a long breath. As I thought, you wanted to take this step. He hesitated for a moment before finally sighing. Qin Yu didn't hesitate. When he used the ember ash flying technique, he had already guessed what would happen. Now he only received confirmation. Qin Yu picked up the pot and poured some water. He gestured with his hand. Westgate has helped me many times. I don't know if I will be able to return, so I will use this cup of tea to express my gratitude. Solitary Westgate sat down and sneered. You want to send me away with a cup of tea? Qin Yu, don't forget your promise. My wife and children are waiting for you to help revive them. Qin Yu's expression was calm. I naturally don't want to die, so I invited you to drink tea to express my gratitude. I also hope to obtain your help once more. Solitary Westgate had no expression. Are you sure that I can help you in this matter? Qin Yu shook his head. I can't be sure, but I have some confidence. The reason? You seem to have known a long time ago that this world isn't the only one. Solitary Westgate was silent for a moment. Your thoughts are truly meticulous. You should have been paying attention to this matter for a long time. Qin Yu didn't deny it. He earnestly said, In these past 2 days, I have searched through the ancient texts. Although I have found some clues, I haven't been able to find the exact method to step out of this world. Westgate, if you know something, please tell me. That's right. His next plan was to step out of the land of divinity and demons and enter an even vaster world. Only like this would he be able to find a way to restore himself before he suffered a backlash from Yu Fan's flying ashes. Only then would he be able to save Ningling and the child in her wound for the next 200 years, allowing them to safely survive and no longer suffer. Solitary Westgate was silent for an even longer period of time. The hall fell silent for a long time before it was broken by a sigh. Qin Yu, you are the first person in this world to know of this secret. Yun Yang and I are not living beings of this world. Many years ago, there was an accident that caused us to arrive here. He looked up at the nothingness in front of him. His eyes glazed over as he fell into his memories. My and Yun Yang's homeland is a world completely different from the land of divinity and demons. There are no immortal or demonic Tao techniques there, nor are there any demons or monsters. Rather, it is a different path of evolution that we call science and technology. Can you imagine that a group of weak and ant-like beings can also fly into the heavens and dive into the earth, explore the seabed, and even travel through the highest heavens? When the road of science and technology came to an end, all sorts of terrifying weapons of mass destruction appeared one after another. They were incomparably powerful and could similarly destroy the heavens and earth. When I first arrived in the land of divinity and demons, Yun Yang and I were scared witless. Luckily, the luck of those who crossed over here was very good. We inadvertently found the inheritances of a powerful ancient civilization and became the so-called God-Eater clan. We also had a heaven-defying cultivation talent. I originally thought that this would be similar to those in novels or television dramas, a magnificent counterattack of the lowly. But while I guessed the beginning, I didn't guess the ending. When I was at my most proud, Yun Yang and Ning were murdered and left me. Solitary Westgate shook his head and laughed at himself. I've gone off topic. I don't think you have much interest in these things, so let's get to the main topic. In the past, when Yun Yang and I entered the land of divinity and demons, we were in a terrifying mystic realm. There was a black hole there that connected to the outside world. But there is something I must warn you about. Afterwards, in order to save Yun Yang and Ning, it wasn't that I didn't have the same thoughts as you. So, I stepped into that black hole once more. But my luck wasn't very good. Not long after I entered, I encountered a terrifying monster beast. If it weren't for a sudden eruption of a swallowing strength that pulled it into the turbulent flows of space, I would have already been buried there. Qin Yu frowned. He said in a low voice, "This black hole isn't just connected to your original hometown." Solitary Westgate nodded. That's right. The black hole that entered the land of divinity and demons is only one of the exits. Afterwards, I carefully tried several more times and finally determined that this black hole can connect to multiple worlds. The reason I was able to safely enter the land of divinity and demons in the past could only be considered good luck. Qin Yu, believe me, most of the worlds that black holes connect to are incomparably terrifying. In fact, when I was in the black hole, through the distorted and collapsing space, I was able to see countless lands of extinction. Some are filled with monstrous flames, some are filled with horrifying monster beasts, and some are even in a state of collapse. If you aren't careful and are sucked in, the result will be death. Qin Yu's complexion was cloudy and uncertain. If everything was as Solitary Westgate said, then stepping into the black hole was the same as taking a step into the gates of hell. But besides this black hole, he couldn't find any other way to leave the land of divinity and demons and step into the outside world. Was this a dead knot? Solitary Westgate earnestly said, "Qin Yu, I hope that you can consider this carefully. If there is any other way, it is best not to step into this black hole." Qin Yu was startled. These words of exhortation had exposed his current situation. Besides this black hole, he couldn't find any other way to leave the land of divinity and demons. In other words, even if there really was another way, how long would he need to spend to find it? 10 years? 20 years? Or even longer? After using the ember ashes flying technique, how many decades would he have? He took a deep breath. The anxiety, hesitation, and restlessness in his eyes completely scattered. When he opened them again, there was only silence. Calmness meant steadiness, without any waves. Stillness meant calmness, clarity of mind. Since there was no way back, he could only step forwards. Whether it was fear or awe, it wouldn't help him at all. It would only make him die faster. Solitary Westgate sighed. "It looks like I wasn't able to change your mind in the end." Qin Yu lightly said, "Westgate, you know my current state. I simply don't have time to waste." Solitary Westgate nodded. "Since you've already made your decision, I will lead you there. But before that, you had best make arrangements for your affairs." Qin Yu said, "I've already been making arrangements these past 2 days. You and I can leave tomorrow." He stood up and walked out. When he reached the entrance to the hall, he didn't look back. If something happens to me tomorrow, I'll have to ask you to look after me. He strode away. Solitary Westgate's eyes revealed a trace of admiration. If it weren't for Ningling, Qin Yu would have had a great deal of time to recuperate from his injuries. With his current talent, as long as he had enough time, his future achievements would be limitless. When the time came, he would naturally be able to step out of the land of divinity and demons. But now, Qin Yu had walked down an incomparably dangerous road. There was no light on this road, and he couldn't see any future. In this world, what was love? At this time, Qin Yu was troubled by love. After he brushed it off that day, Yu Qi didn't ask any further. But her worries never disappeared. In any case, it was impossible to conceal this matter from her. But to Yu Qi, this was far too unfair. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. He pushed open the door and entered the hall. Since he couldn't find a suitable excuse, he could only tell her the truth. He looked up at the hall and met Yu Qi's eyes. She was placing the bowls and chopsticks. The maids in the hall had been sent away, so she was the only one present. "Your Majesty has arrived. Quickly take a seat." Yu Qi walked over with a gentle smile and had Qin Yu take a seat. She was a bit nervous. "Although I found someone to help watch from this side, each dish was personally made by me. If the taste isn't good, I hope that your Majesty can forgive me." Qin Yu smiled. "I will definitely eat more of the dishes you personally made." He picked up his chopsticks and took a few bites as Yu Qi nervously watched. After chewing and swallowing, Qin Yu gave her a thumbs up. "The taste is very good. Although it was a bit exaggerated, besides the dishes not looking too good, the taste was quite good." Yu Qi brightly smiled. "It's good that your Majesty is satisfied." She sat at the side, helping Qin Yu pour wine and take out dishes. She would occasionally take a bite or two, her eyes rarely leaving Qin Yu's face. Although no one said anything, the reluctance to part in the hall was exceptionally clear. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Qin Yu patted his stomach and set down his chopsticks. Yu Qi had already brewed some tea, and she offered it to him with both hands. After taking a few sips, Qin Yu said, "Do you already know?" Yu Qi lowered her head. "Your Majesty has been looking through ancient texts these past 2 days. I now control a portion of the Holy Emperor Palace's authority, so I couldn't help but look through them. I ask that your Majesty forgive me." Qin Yu pulled her back. "I'm sorry, but this matter, I understand." Yu Qi interrupted him. "Although I hope that I can be together with your Majesty for a long time, I also know that it is impossible for you to give up on Ningling. Your Majesty, I do not ask for anything. I only hope that you can remember that there are 2 women in the land of divinity and demons who are waiting for you. I ask that you take care of yourself." The next day, without anyone knowing, Qin Yu and Solitary Westgate quietly left the demonic path's small world. The Holy Emperor Palace sealed itself off and announced to the outside world that His Majesty the Holy Sovereign had yet to recover from his injuries and would enter a long period of seclusion to cultivate. Between the heavens and earth, the land was vast and boundless, but the area covered by the endless sea was actually far larger than the land. After billions of years, the vast sea had experienced vicissitudes of time. In the distant past, the vast sea might have once been a continent filled with people. The black hole that Solitary Westgate used to enter the land of divinity and demons was originally located at the peak of a towering mountain. But now it was hidden deep in the sea. In the clear skies, several seabirds, soaring through the skies, seemed to be startled. They flapped their wings and flew into the distance. In the next moment, space twisted and Solitary Westgate and Qin Yu stepped out. Looking down at the sea, Solitary Westgate said in a low voice, "We've arrived!" With a flick of his sleeves, the sea water parted. It was like a bottomless abyss had been torn open in the sea. Qin Yu nodded. "Let's go." Whoosh! Whoosh! The 2 of them instantly flew in. The sea water parted to the sides. with a loud rumbling sound. The sound shook the heavens and earth. The light coming from above became increasingly weak, and the surroundings gradually fell into darkness. But to the supreme beings of this world, pure darkness was meaningless. They could clearly see everything beneath the sea. Whoosh! The seawater suddenly broke apart, and a giant sea beast drilled out. It roared. "This is the territory of the Lord Supreme. No one is allowed to enter." A terrifying aura erupted. It was actually much stronger than that of an ordinary Calamity Immortal. Solitary Westgate stopped. He lifted a hand, and a rune appeared between his fingers. In the darkness, it released a faint blue light. The great beast instantly restrained its aura, and its massive body fell to the ground. Its voice was incomparably respectful. "Humble guard greets the Lord Supreme." Solitary Westgate lightly said, "I never thought that after so many years you would still be guarding this place." The great beast said, "I will follow the Lord's will for the rest of my life. I will not dare to slack off in the slightest." Solitary Westgate nodded. "Very good. Lead the way and bring us to the place you are guarding." The great beast roared. It swung its tail and tore through the seawater, howling as it dove to the seabed. Solitary Westgate met Chinyu's eyes and said, "This great beast is called Leviathan. I inadvertently saved it in the black hole. In order to repay me, it has guarded this place on its own initiative. After so many years, I never imagined that it would still be here." Chinyu's eyes flashed. He suddenly said, "Leviathan, you managed to come out of the black hole alive. Just what dangers are inside?" The great beast turned its head, its giant eyes staring at Chinyu. "You want to enter the black hole?" Chinyu nodded. The great beast sneered. "In the past, even the Lord Supreme only narrowly escaped with his life. If you enter, you will undoubtedly die." Solitary Westgate shouted out, "How insolent! Do not be rude to His Majesty, the Demon Sovereign. The Demon Sovereign is in existence on the same level as me. His absolute strength is even above mine." Leviathan hurriedly lowered its head in apology, but it still said, "I am speaking the truth. If the Demon Sovereign is your friend, you should have stopped him." Chinyu said, "Leviathan, how about we make a bet? If I don't die after entering the black hole, then you will be the mount of my future child. How about it?" Leviathan was stunned. Chinyu laughed. "If you don't speak, then I will take it as you tacitly agree. Westgate be our witness." Leviathan. Chapter 675. The pitch-black deep sea was no longer calm. The tumbling, icy cold seawater was like a trapped beast, crazily pounding against the walls of water that were separated on both sides, emitting deafening, rumbling sounds. Solitary Westgate said, "Starting from here, you and I are considered to have stepped into the range of the mystic realm's power. It is best to be a bit more cautious." Even with his cultivation level, he had to point this out. From this, one could imagine how much dread he felt in his heart. Chinyu nodded, not saying anything. Leviathan couldn't help but turn his head, a strange light flashing in his eyes. Although Solitary Westgate had said that Chinyu was in existence on the same level as him, he couldn't feel any oppressive aura coming from Chinyu's body. Humph, humph. Just how much weight His Majesty the Demon Sovereign has, we'll find out in a bit. If you're just a silver spear, then go back to where you came from. Don't throw yourself into the black hole and die. Bang! With a loud explosion, the walls of water shattered. The icy cold seawater surged forwards, condensing into a fierce serpent. It had 2 pairs of transparent wings that flapped at an incomparably fast speed. At this time, its target was Chinyu, whose aura was the least obvious out of the 3 people and 1 beast. It opened its mouth, and between its fangs, one could smell a foul stench. Leviathan's 2 giant eyes locked onto Chinyu. This serpent was formed from the power of the mystic realm and was extremely tyrannical. Even if it wanted to deal with it, it would have to expend a great deal of effort. Chinyu moved. He lifted a hand and pointed out a finger. Then he drew back his hand, and then there was no then. Leviathan's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. It stared blankly at that aggressive serpent. As if it had been smashed by a mountain, it instantly disintegrated. And all of this was because Qin Yu had lifted his hand and pointed out a finger. If the strength of this finger fell on its body, just what would the result be? Just thinking about this caused a cold sweat to form on Leviathan's body. But at this time, Qin Yu suddenly looked up at it, the corners of his lips curling up. Phut! Leviathan shivered, feeling as if it would cry. It was well aware that its thoughts of wanting to watch the fun had been discovered. This was simply a F** King Disaster. To be targeted by such a person with world-shaking strength. One wouldn't even know how one died. He was simply a stupid pig. Lord Shiman had already said that His Majesty the Devil Emperor was in existence on the same level as him. So how could he dare to be disrespectful? Kuin fiercely swung its tail, and a powerful aura burst out of its body. Its deep voice was sonorous and powerful. Two lords, you don't have to waste your energy on this. This little one will open the way for you. It moved its body with all its might, crushing everything in its way and shattering the power of the arcane realm that was spreading out. Your Majesty, the Demon Emperor, people say that it is a great thing to know one's mistake and change for the better. Please be magnanimous and let me off this time. With the Kuin beast leading the way, Xiao Chen's speed increased greatly. He continued to descend, and when he passed through an invisible barrier, the roaring of the sea disappeared. A verdant mountain range, overflowing with vitality, appeared in his line of sight. It lay at the bottom of the deep sea and stretched for tens of thousands of miles without end. Birds soared above the mountain range, and deep roars of beasts could be heard from time to time in the dense forest, where no one could be seen. If he didn't see it with his own eyes, he would find it hard to believe that tens of thousands of miles beneath the deep sea actually existed such a mountain range filled with vitality. It was like it possessed some sort of invisible power. Whether it was in the deep sea or beneath the great sun, it could maintain its original appearance. Feeling the tyrannical aura of the Kuin beast, a thunderous roar exploded in the mountains. Kuin, you actually dare to come back? Then don't leave. Stay here and be my dinner. A mushroom cloud soared into the sky. The mountain range below loudly collapsed, and countless thick trees were shattered into powder by the formidable strength. A massive shadow passed through the mushroom cloud and leapt into the air. It had 4 thick and powerful limbs, and 2 tusks jutted out from its lips. Its hair was pitch black and shiny like iron needles. This was an incomparably strong wild boar. As it leapt into the air, the wild boar's eyes widened in anger. It finally discovered solitary Westgate and Qin Yu standing to the side. Its body fiercely crouched down, and its front legs stretched taut in the air. It came to a standard sudden stop, causing ripples to appear in space. It roared, flustered, and exasperated. Despicable little beast, this is a fair battle between us 2 beast kings, and yet you dare to look for helpers? I, this pig, am ashamed to be associated with you. It turned around and exerted force with its hind legs. Then it slipped away like a wisp of smoke. The Kuin beast panicked. 2 lords, this wild boar spoke rudely. How could you 2 allow it to run away? You must ruthlessly punish it. Solitary Westgate had no expression. Kuin beast, don't you think you should give me an explanation? I ordered you to guard the mystic realm, so why is it that the one in charge here is a wild boar monster? A demonic light flashed, and the Kuin beast transformed into a strong man. His face was flushed red, and he stammered, "My lord, please punish me!" He really didn't have the face to explain. Who knew just which corner of the black hole this damned wild boar had jumped out from? It was incomparably strong, especially with its shiny black boar skin. Its defensive strength was even more terrifying than a city wall's. Striking it with all of its strength didn't even cause it any pain. Ever since this wild boar jumped out from the black hole, The Kuan beast had fought with it dozens of times in order to defend its territory and authority. It had used all of its abilities, but the result was that not only was it unable to defeat this wild boar, but the more it fought, the more it retreated. Finally, it was forced out of the mystic realm and could only return to its original form, living in the pitch-black and icy cold sea. What nonsense! Weren't high-level monster beasts extremely intelligent? If it weren't for the fact that they were forced, who wouldn't want to live in this comfortable, mystic realm? Wasn't it because they were forced? Solitary Westgate frowned. When I came here in the past, I never saw this wild boar. Did it run out from the black hole? The Kuan beast said, "It is as my lord says, this wild boar has only been out for several dozen years, and its strength is about the same as mine. But its defensive strength is truly abnormal for these past several dozen years. I have been humiliated by it. I ask that my lord take revenge for me." The man, who was nearly 2 meters tall, began to cry at the drop of a hat. He immediately fell to the ground with a heartbroken expression. Anyone who saw it would be moved to tears. In any case, since it had already lost face, it had to make sure it was worth it. This was a heaven-sent opportunity, and it had to grasp it. It had to borrow the hands of these two lords to eliminate this damned wild boar. Otherwise, its future life as a beast would be filled with darkness. Wandering in the deep sea, it wouldn't be able to eat or sleep. The Kuan beast didn't want to live another day. Solitary Westgate coldly snorted. He certainly understood its thoughts, but the Kuan beast was extremely obedient and could be considered one of his subordinates. He needed its help in guarding the mystic realm. "If there is no delay, I will clean up that wild boar." The Kuan beast was overjoyed. "Thank you, my lord. Thank you, my lord. Ha ha ha! Damned wild boar, your end has arrived." It looked up at Chinyu and saw that the demon sovereign was frowning, as if he were deep in thought. This left the Kuan beast envious. He was truly worthy of being a supreme existence on the same level as Lord Westgate. Even such a fierce, wild boar monster didn't have the qualifications to attract his attention. Instead, he was just standing there thinking about his own matters. TSK, TSK, when will we have such a day? The Kuan beast shook its head and suppressed its envy. As it thought of how the wild boar monster was about to suffer, it immediately became excited. It shouted, "I will lead the way for the two lords." The sooner they finished, the sooner they could slaughter the boar. Tonight, this grandfather wants to eat a pig feast. In the rolling mountain range, in a cave filled with gold and silver and overflowing with the aura of a nouveau riche, Zhu Dagong lay down on a thick tiger skin, gasping for breath. Damn, this was just too frightening. Although the two people standing beside the Kuan beast didn't reveal too much of their auras, Zhu Dagong's eyes weren't to be trifled with. He could immediately see that these two were ruthless characters that ate pigs without spitting out the bones. If he hadn't sensed anything and rushed forwards, he feared he would have already been skinned alive, fried, and served on the dining table. That damned Kuan beast! How shameless and despicable! Luckily, I ran away fast enough. Zhu Dagong's breathing steadied a little, but at this time he suddenly shivered and his eyes widened. Something's wrong, this feeling, damn it. Someone must be thinking of me. Zhu Dagong crawled up and paced back and forth several times. Then his body turned into a monstrous wind that howled through the cave, taking away all the gold and silver. A wise man knows when to fight when the odds are against him. I'll leave here first and hide in that secret area. Kuan beast will slowly settle our debts in the future. Who? The monstrous wind rushed out of the cave and flew deeper into the mountain range, vanishing from sight. Hidden deep in the seabed mountain range, not only was there a rich life force, but there were also tremendous dangers. In a short period of time, Chinyu saw several extremely powerful strange beasts. Even an ordinary Calamity Immortal Realm cultivator would have trouble dealing with them. But the Kuan beast easily dealt with them, It was clear just how tyrannical it was. As for the slightly stronger strange beasts, in order to not waste time, with solitary Westgate and Cheney taking action, it was much easier to clean them up. Afterwards, the powerful strange beasts in the mountain range realized that the intruders weren't something they could resist, so they retreated early. Half a day later, they reached the end of the tens of thousands of miles of dangerous mountain range. In front of them was a towering mountain. It was thick at the base and sharp at the top. It was shaped like an upside-down cone. Even though there were countless plants growing on it, the surface was smooth and flat, without any creases or creases. With just a glance, one could determine that this mountain range wasn't formed naturally, but was refined by someone. Solitary Westgate said, "I also suspect that this mountain range itself is a refined treasure. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find a way to subdue it. The spatial black hole is at the summit. Let's not waste any more time. Let's go up." Climbing a mountain wasn't a simple matter, but that was only relatively speaking. Solitary Westgate stepped forwards, and his body was like a balloon as he floated up the mountain. As for Cheney, he kept his feet firmly planted on the ground. He climbed up step by step. Although his pace didn't seem fast, he steadily followed behind. The Kuan beast had a look of envy in its eyes. It couldn't accomplish such a difficult movement, so it obediently reverted to its original form. Relying on its great strength, it rumbled all the way up, filled with momentum. The mountain peak was shaped like an upside-down cone. The higher it went, the thicker the air became. It was like an invisible glue tightly wrapping around its body. Every step forwards required a great deal of strength. Moreover, what left Cheney feeling even more fierce was that deep and low syllables echoed out from the depths of his heart with every step he took. Thump! Thump! It was as if he was a drumstick and the smooth mountain peak beneath his feet was a giant cowhide drum. These short syllables were deep and heavy, possessing a formidable penetrating power. They were like great waves that constantly impacted the mind. The Kuan beast's eyes widened, and it gasped for breath. Fatigue was one thing, but the more important reason was that it was resisting the rumbling in its heart. This sort of feeling was like millions of gongs and drums were beating in its mind at the same time, stimulating it to the point of wanting to explode. Its eyes fell on solitary Westgate and Cheney. One floated up, and the other was calm and dignified, neither of them seeming tired at all. Even if one disregarded their cultivation bases, the two of them had already tempered their minds to an extremely shocking level. TSK said they were trapped in such a low-level world, and yet they could reach such heights. If they were to enter a higher-level cultivation world, their achievements would be unimaginable. The mountain peak was high, but no matter how far it was, as long as they kept moving forwards, they would eventually reach it. 2 hours later, just as the Kuan beast was about to collapse, they finally arrived at the mountain peak. It was a sharp point, but this point actually contained infinite space. Stepping in, the space in front of them immediately twisted. When their vision was restored once more, they found themselves in an unstable space that shook. It covered an enormous area. One could tell with a single glance that it was no smaller than the area covered by the mountain range outside. But now, the eyes of two people and one beast were drawn to a 1,000-foot wide black hole in the skies. The space around it trembled. Ripples spread out in all directions. Runes appeared in the ripples, all of them purple and gold in color. They constantly spun on their own, mysterious to the extreme. The inside of the black hole was pitch black. If one looked within, it seemed as if they would be captured and swallowed up, leading to an unpredictable world. This was the black hole that solitary Westgate spoke of that had sent him into the land of divinity and demons. The Kuan beast shrank back, awe in its eyes. In the past, it had inadvertently been sucked in. If it weren't for solitary Westgate helping out, it would have died without a grave. Even though tens of millions of years had passed, thinking about it now, it still felt as if it had fallen into an icy lake. That feeling of powerlessness and fear was something it never wanted to experience again. The demon sovereign actually wanted to rush into a black hole. It simply couldn't understand why. Otherwise, with his cultivation, he could easily live for tens of millions of years, more than enough to enjoy the tumultuous world of mortals. The Kuan beast shook its head. Perhaps this was the strange hobby of powerhouses challenging themselves. It looked away, but at this time, without warning, it met another pair of eyes. After a moment of shock, the Kuan beast's eyes widened. Then it grinned and laughed. "Good, you wild boar, you actually ran here." It originally wanted to find trouble with the Kuan beast after this matter was over, but this boar monster had actually delivered itself to its doorstep. This was simply wonderful. Lord Westgate placed a great deal of importance on this black hole. If Pig Doggong ran here, he absolutely wouldn't have a good ending. Feeling the temperature in the air drop, Big Pig wanted to cry, but no tears came out. In all honesty, he had run all the way here to hide from these two fiendish stars. How could he have imagined that he would run into them here? Chapter 676. Solitary Westgate's face was like water. "Evil creature, I originally wanted to leave you alive and guard the mystic realm with the Leviathan beast, but I never thought you would dare to run here and act so insolently. How could I allow you to do this?" The infinite heavens and myriad worlds were vast and boundless. This black hole was his only chance to return to his homeland. Solitary Westgate had promised his wife and son that once they revived, he would find a way to bring them back. With this promise, he placed even more importance on the space black hole. For this wild boar to run here to seek shelter, that could be considered touching on Solitary Westgate's reverse scale. Bang! There was a loud bang in the void, and a majestic force suddenly erupted, sending the wild boar demon flying and crashing heavily onto the ground. The earth rumbled and a terrifying crater appeared. The wild boar monster cried out miserably, "My lord, please spare me! Please spare me!" His eyes were filled with pleading and fear, causing people to subconsciously feel pity for him. The Kuan beast grinned. Although it hated this wild boar to the bone, they were both beast kings. Seeing it fall to such a state, it couldn't help but feel complicated emotions. Qin Yu faintly smiled. He looked at the wild boar monster that was howling with all its might. This fellow's skin was truly thick and coarse. Solitary Westgate hadn't held back at all just now, and even a supreme level strike hadn't been able to cause any substantial damage to it. This guy was quite good at acting. If Qin Yu could see through it, then there was no reason for Solitary Westgate to be fooled. His complexion became increasingly ugly, and a cold light seeped out from the depths of his eyes. What a guy! The attack that was prepared to kill this wild boar actually didn't injure him in the slightest. For a supreme being, this was really too humiliating. What's more, this wild boar actually dared to bark. Who was it trying to fool? This was simply intolerable. He raised his hand, and the air thickened. A terrifying aura erupted, like a volcano, sweeping out in all directions. The wild boar demon quivered. Its 4 short and thick legs suddenly exerted force, and it jumped out of the pit. Its small eyes were wide open, revealing true fear. Solitary Westgate was serious. No matter how thick his skin was, if he could block 1 strike, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, would he be able to persist forever? It was only a matter of time before he was killed. "Oh my God!" Old Zhu almost cried. "Wait," Qin Yu suddenly said. Solitary Westgate frowned. He drew back his hand and asked, "What is it?" Qin Yu smiled. "This wild boar and I should be old acquaintances. Let me confirm it first." He took a step forward. "If you want to live, then do as I say. Do you understand?" The wild boar demon nodded its head furiously. As long as it could survive, it would do anything. "What? You're talking about the Beast King's face?" Smelly dog fart. Survival was the most important thing. What was face? Can it eat or drink? Qin Yu said, "Raise your front hoof." No, the other one. The wild boar demon obediently switched over, all kinds of thoughts running through its mind. Why did this person ask me to lift his hoof? Even if he has some kind of bad hobby, he should ask me to lift his hind leg. Could it be that this person is more perverted than I thought? If Chinyu knew what it was thinking right now, he would have killed it with a wave of his hand. Looking at the missing hoof, he let out a light breath, a look of nostalgia on his face. He had only thought it looked familiar, but he never imagined it would actually be the wild boar. Strictly speaking, Chinyu and this wild boar's destiny was truly intertwined. Who would have thought he would see it here? Solitary Westgate revealed a look of surprise. You really know it? Chinyu nodded. Not only do I know it, but our relationship is very deep. A long, long time ago, I was only the most humble disciple of a small sect in the land of exiles. But thanks to this pig, I was nearly beaten to death. Afterwards, it was this pig that saved my life and even helped me obtain a lucky chance that changed my destiny. He suddenly smiled. The reason you and I are able to meet can be considered because of this pig. Westgate, don't you think this is a bit funny? Solitary Westgate earnestly looked at Chinyu. After determining that he wasn't joking, he was left speechless. Just what was going on here? The Kuan beast's eyes widened, a dull expression on its face that seemed to say, I'm uncultured, don't lie to me. This wild boar was friends with the demon sovereign? This was absolutely impossible. It clearly ran out from a black hole in space. You haven't even gone in, so how could you recognize it? But the Kuan beast only dared to roar these words in its heart. It didn't dare to speak them out loud. What nonsense! Chinyu had already said this, and it still dared to question him. Did it think that it had lived for too long? Just now it had felt sad for the wild boar's bitter experience, and now it was angry that it had escaped calamity. It could only be said that the Kuan beast was being unreasonable. Chinyu lightly said, What? Don't you recognize me? Eastern Mountain Sect, Medicine Garden, Mountain Valley. Do you remember? The wild boar's mouth fell open, a shocked expression on its face. It certainly wouldn't forget the most thrilling scene of its life as a pig. It was just that Chinyu's aura had been too strong, so it didn't dare to think in that direction. Now that it was pointed out by Chinyu, although he had changed a bit, he still looked like that thin and weak youth in its memories. It's you. It's really you. You are. Chinyu. Chinyu nodded. That's right, it's me. The wild boar suppressed its shaking heart and squeezed out a smile. Ah, I never thought that you would have today's achievements. We are old acquaintances, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that we are friends who have gone through life and death together. Today was all a misunderstanding. Lord Chinyu, please help me explain things and be magnanimous enough to let me go. Chinyu said, In the past you nearly killed me, and then you saved me once more. The grudges between us are settled, and we can't be considered old acquaintances. If you want me to save you today, then honestly answer my questions. If you dare to deceive me, then I won't stop this person from attacking you. Solitary Westgate coldly snorted, shaking Zhu Dagong's heart. He quickly expressed his stance. I will definitely speak my mind and speak my mind. Chinyu said, Very good. The first question is, why did you come out from this black hole in space? Zhu Dagong scowled. I don't know. I really don't know. That night in the past, after I killed someone and ran away, I don't know how I was swept away by a shattered space. When I woke up again, I had arrived in another world. That was a world where pigs ruled and wild boars were revered. I was recognized by that group of wild boar elders as a descendant of the Pig King's bloodline, and in my confusion, I became the heir to the throne. As he spoke, a nostalgic look appeared on his face. Those days of the past were truly memorable. All sorts of beautiful pigs were at his beck and call, and he had food and clothes at his fingertips. Moreover, a large group of wild boar elders forced him to eat all sorts of heavenly treasures every day. His cultivation rose by leaps and bounds, and he was so happy that snot bubbles came out of his nose. Unfortunately, some pigs rebelled and I was forced to flee. That damned wild boar divine artifact had a problem at a critical moment, and I was sent into the turbulent flows of space. Luckily, my flesh was thick and I managed to escape alive. Then I came here. Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows. Wait a minute. Tell me, how did you manage to leave the black hole alive? Is your flesh thick? Looking into Qin Yu's eyes, Dagong Pig suddenly had a foreboding premonition. But he didn't dare to lie. He could only brace himself and admit it. Solitary Westgate suddenly said, "How long did you take to leave the black hole?" "Humph. I cultivate supernatural powers, so I can distinguish between truth and falsehood. You had best not speak nonsense. Otherwise I will skin you alive and dry you to make jerky." Dagong Pig shook and began to cry. I used around 20 days, it's true. I'm not lying, it was too terrifying inside. I almost died several times. People say that those who survive a calamity are destined for good fortune. But I still haven't enjoyed my blessings yet. I don't want to die. Solitary Westgate sucked in a deep breath. You said that you rushed through the black hole for 20 days. His burning gaze caused Dagong Pig to shiver even more fiercely and his tears to flow even more violently. But he didn't dare to not answer. Yes, yes, Solitary Westgate looked at Qin Yu, his eyes filled with emotion. Your luck is really good. He didn't need to speak clearly to understand the meaning. Qin Yu smiled. I've always been a lucky person. He coughed. There are two paths. The first is what Westgate said just now, and that is to skin you alive and dry you to make jerky. The second is to enter the black hole with me. There isn't much time, so choose now. Dagong Pig was stunned. If the first path was death, then the second path was no different from death. Was there even a need to choose? Choose your sister. Choose, choose, choose. He incomparably hoped that Qin Yu was joking. But as he looked into his eyes for 3 seconds, Dagong Pig's final hopes were shattered. It was true. It was true. He really wanted to enter the black hole. Thinking back to those 20 days when he wasn't a pig, Dagong Pig had trembled like a sieve. This time he wasn't acting, he was truly afraid. He had an impulse to curse at Qin Yu and then die. In any case, he was going to die anyway, so why suffer so much pain? But this impulse only lasted for a second before it disintegrated in Dagong Pig's heart. His brilliant life as a pig had just begun. So how could he be willing to die like this? No, I can't give up. Moreover, after entering the black hole, I might not necessarily die. Although this bastard Qin Yu's cultivation was tyrannical, there were too many accidents in the black hole. Perhaps he would soon kick the bucket. If I hurried back at that time, perhaps nothing would happen to me. Yes, I can't give up. I have to persist. After Dagong Pig's thoughts violently fluctuated, he looked up with a heavy expression. I choose the second path. Qin Yu smiled. Smart. Then let's not delay any further. Let's go. Dagong Pig was stunned. Big brother, this was the same as seeking death. Didn't you need to prepare yourself? Even if you were prepared, you should say your goodbyes. Why did you turn around and leave like this? Seeing Qin Yu walk towards the black hole, Dagong Pig clenched his teeth and struggled to keep up. Solitary Westgate loudly said, Qin Yu, you must return alive. You owe me so many favors, and I am waiting to collect them all. Qin Yu didn't look back. He waved his hand. As I said just now, my luck has always been excellent. Within 200 years, I will definitely return. Solitary Westgate laughed. Good. I promise you that before you return, I will look after everything for you. Thank you. After speaking, Qin Yu lifted his hand and grasped the air. As Dagong Pig cried out miserably, he grabbed him and stepped into the black hole. Shwa! As if they had fallen into black water, the man and pig instantly vanished from sight. The feeling of stepping into the black hole was like being placed in an incomparably terrifying vortex. It wildly spun around, leaving one dizzy and disoriented. And what was most terrifying was the tearing strength that surrounded them. Even with Qin Yu's mortal body's intensity, he still felt a stabbing pain beneath this tearing strength. He had no choice but to revolve his magic power to resist it. On the other hand, Zhu Dagong, who was at the side, was much calmer. The thick, black, and shiny fur on his body trembled slightly, dispelling the tearing force. Turning around, he could faintly see the exit he had just stepped through. Turning back was simple, but moving forwards was difficult to predict whether he would live or die. Or, to be more precise, it was a 9 out of 10 chance of death and 1 chance of survival. Qin Yu didn't hesitate. He looked away and said, "Let's go." Dagong Pig wailed in his heart. He could only follow behind. But just as he took a step forward, an icy voice echoed in his ears, "You walk in front." He was stunned. Looking at Qin Yu's indifferent face, Dagong Pig cursed inwardly. "You bastard! Even if you wanted this Grandpa Pig to be your shield, there was no need to make it so obvious." But no matter how much he cursed in his heart, Dagong Pig didn't dare to reveal any of his thoughts. His thick limbs moved forwards, and when Qin Yu couldn't see his expression, his lips curved up in a sly smile. "Hee, Qin Yu, no matter how treacherous and shameless you are, not being familiar with this black hole is your greatest shortcoming. Do you think that the dangers in the black hole all come from the front? Fine, even if most of them come from the front, the back might not be safe. Then, I ask you to do a good deed and end your own life as soon as possible so that this old pig can hurry up and leave. You will die a worthy death and I will be free." As his thoughts raced, Dagong's eyes suddenly widened. His 4 legs pushed outwards and he began to wildly run through the black hole. Qin Yu frowned. He didn't stop him or ask any questions. His figure flickered, and he followed, closely behind. Just as they rushed out, a turbulent space flow suddenly appeared in the black hole behind them. Passing through the distorted space barrier, one could faintly see a gray world within. As if sensing the aura of life, a loud roar resounded through this world. Then the distorted space barrier was torn apart from the inside, and a skeletal hand drilled out, grasping at Qin Yu and Dagong Pig. Qin Yu's mind shrank. Loud rumbling sounds rang out from within his body. This skeletal hand actually caused an instinctive great fear to rise up from the depths of his soul. At this time, the turbulent space flow in front of them vanished, just as it had appeared. The skeletal hand retracted, like a bolt of lightning before the space closed. "Who?" Qin Yu let out a long breath. He discovered that a cold sweat had formed on his back. No wonder solitary Westgate feared this black hole so much. In just a single breath of time, he had faced 2 great dangers. His eyes fell on Dagong. This fellow also had a frightened expression. He lifted his front hooves and wiped the sweat off his face. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He said, "Let's keep going." He didn't have a clear destination, but he had to at least choose a high-level cultivation world that was suitable for survival. He hoped that his luck would be better and he could find a suitable exit as soon as possible. Reality proved that bragging didn't have a good ending. In the following 4 days, they encountered turbulent space flows several times and ran into numerous dangers. One of the strange winged beings that was thrown in by the turbulent space flows roared out some incomprehensible syllables. It took Qin Yu a great deal of effort to kill this person. What was hateful was that after this winged being died, its body directly exploded, causing a massive turbulent space flow. Luckily, Qin Yu had run away quickly. Otherwise, he would have been dragged to the grave with it. Dagong led the way in front. He groaned inwardly. For days had already passed. If they went any further, he wouldn't be able to find the way back. But this bastard Qin Yu, not only was he cautious, but he was also strong. He had managed to escape several dangerous situations and still hadn't been injured. If things continued like this, he wouldn't be able to return even if he wanted to. He could only follow this bastard all the way to the dark. As he was feeling vexed, Dagong's eyes widened, revealing a hint of struggle. But soon, This struggle turned into determination. He had to go all out. Taking a risk was better than waiting here to die. He had to do it. Dagong roared out loud. His limbs gathered strength, and he rushed forwards like a bolt of lightning. This wasn't the first time he had done this. And sure enough, Qin Yu's feet moved, following behind him like a shadow. Roar! Dagong suddenly roared. He raised his 2 hind hooves and used all of his strength to ruthlessly kick backwards. His hooves instantly rose up, erupting with a rich black light. A tyrannical strength swept out like a tide. Qin Yu lifted a hand and punched out. Dagong cried out pitifully as he was sent flying away. But his eyes were actually filled with surprise. This was because he could clearly sense that after Qin Yu was kicked with all his strength, he had come to a momentary pause. That was already enough. As his body tumbled in the air, Dagong grinned. He lifted his front hooves and waved them at Qin Yu. "Goodbye, bastard!" Bang! A turbulent space flow suddenly appeared. Like a crocodile in a swamp, it opened its massive mouth and swallowed Qin Yu. But at this time, a rapidly growing arm drilled out from the turbulent space flow and grabbed the excited Dagong. "Don't!" With a miserable cry, Dagong was pulled in. In the next moment, the turbulent space flow vanished into a black hole. Qin Yu, who had transformed into an ancient, desperately resisted the destructive strength that came from the turbulent space flow. His complexion was pale. He had already asked solitary Westgate. After entering the space of a black hole, the most terrifying fate was to be sucked into the turbulent space flow. This was because this sort of turbulent space flow had no coordinates or direction. Any life that was sucked in would be sent to any random world. This sort of uncontrollable and unpredictable nature in itself represented a great deal of danger. Qin Yu had already discovered that besides Dagong's thick skin and thick flesh, he also seemed to have a keen sense for danger. Perhaps it was because of this that he was able to survive for 20 long days in the space of the black hole. But he never imagined that this bastard would dare to plot against him. Thinking of this, Qin Yu tightened his grip and Dagong began to howl like a ghost. "Lord Qin Yu, I was wrong. I was really wrong. I beg you to spare my life." Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed the tumbling, killing intent in his chest. Killing this pig now wouldn't help the situation. If he left it alive, perhaps it would be useful in the future. Of course, Qin Yu wouldn't help this pig resist the strength of the turbulent space flow. If it couldn't withstand it and was torn to shreds, that would mean it had already died. Time slowly passed. The turbulent space flow showed no signs of dissipating. Qin Yu's face gradually paled and his eyes darkened. The vast majority of turbulent space flows would send life forms into random worlds. But there were also extremely rare exceptions. These turbulent space flows would fall into the cracks between worlds, constantly rushing about. If one was lucky, they would be able to find an exit in a short period of time. If they were unlucky, they could only be toyed to death. Dagong's high-pitched cries of pain had long since become weak. Only when he was seriously injured would he let out a grunt. Could it be that he would die together with this pig in the turbulent space flow? Qin Yu bitterly smiled. Indeed, he couldn't brag. He had just said that his luck had always been good, but now he had been slapped in the face. He took a deep breath, and his heart began to vigorously beat. On the surface of the ancient's body, the wounds that were torn open by the turbulent space flow began to repair at an astonishing speed. But no matter how fast he repaired, he still couldn't keep up with the tearing speed. Soon, Qin Yu's ancient body was bathed in blood. The blood flowed down his arms to his palms and along the meridians of his fingers. It fell onto Dagong's body. After this blood touched Dagong's damaged flesh and blood, it actually fused into it. The dying Dagong actually obtained a trace of vitality. By borrowing the strength of the ancient's blood, he stubbornly survived. Within the turbulent space flow, time lost all meaning. Every breath of time seemed incomparably long, as if it were being twisted and stretched out. Qin Yu didn't know how much time passed, But there was one thing he was sure of. If he didn't leave the turbulent space flow soon, he would really die here, resisting the destructive strength of the turbulent space flow, in addition to the massive loss of blood and the exhaustion of repairing his mortal body. Chinyu became incomparably weak. Black spots began to appear in front of him. Just as he thought he wouldn't be able to escape this calamity, a brilliant light erupted without warning. It was so bright that even though he closed his eyes, he still couldn't help but tear up. He was out. Chinyu rapidly sank down. Before he could rejoice, he crashed into the ground, tumbling several times before continuing to fall. Thump. Chapter 677. Creak. The sound of the old wooden door opening interrupted the silent youth on the bed. He opened his eyes. His calm eyes were dim, but they were as deep as the sea. Looking at the old woman who walked in, the youth smiled. "Granny, I've really troubled you to take care of me." The old woman was very old. Her skin had lost its luster and was now moist, like dried tree bark overlapping together. She smiled and waved her hand, but there were only a few broken teeth left in her open mouth. The granny was a mute. After several days of contact, the youth already knew this. After thanking her once more, he received the porcelain bowl from her hands. The black and white porcelain bowl was thick and heavy. It was unknown how many years it had been used for. The rim of the bowl was covered with cracks, but it was extremely clean. Now, there was porridge placed inside, and there were some mushroom-shaped herbs floating within. The youth sighed inwardly. He had indeed met a good person. Although the medicinal efficacy of the herbs in the porridge was negligible to him, it was still extremely precious to the old woman's family. He had politely declined twice, saying that he didn't need the herbs and that he could still get better. But he had been scolded by the hale and hearty old man, who said that if a young man didn't pay attention to rest and recuperate, it would be troublesome once he grew older. The porridge tasted very good. Rice and herbs mixed with the smell of burning firewood. The youth drank it all and returned the bowl with both hands. "Granny, once my injuries are healed, I will definitely repay you." As he said this, his attitude was incomparably earnest. The granny smiled and nodded. She gestured for him to lie down and rest. Then she turned and left with the bowl. Before the wooden door closed, he heard another set of footsteps in the courtyard, light and vigorous. The granny stopped and called out. The young woman's impatient voice sounded out, "I'm not hungry. Don't disturb my sleep." A figure flashed outside the wooden door. Although it was fast, it was enough for Chinyu to see the owner of the voice for the first time. She wore a close-fitting leather coat and hat. Although it was thick and heavy, it couldn't hide the young woman's beauty. It was just that the exposed skin was dark and rough, causing her charm to dim by a great deal. At the door, the granny sighed. She closed the door and left, but her footsteps were clearly slower. It was clear that her mood was heavy. On the bed, the young man frowned. As far as he was concerned, being able to have a pair of kind and loving grandparents was already an extremely great fortune, and this young woman really didn't care about her fortune. Shaking his head, the young man closed his eyes and began to organize the information he had obtained from the elderly couple over the past few days. Without a doubt, he was very lucky. Even though he was almost killed by the spatial turbulence, the world he entered was very suitable for cultivation. The extremely rich heaven and earth origin energy in the air was no worse than that of a demonic path small world. This was the best proof of this. It had to be known that the demonic path small world was the foundation of the entire demonic path. After countless generations of cultivators, it had reached its current level. And where was Chinyu right now? In a remote mountain village, in the home of an old shepherd and his wife. There was no comparison between the two. Without a doubt, the cultivation standard of this world far surpassed that of the land of divinity and demons. But as to what level it was still unknown. That's right, the youth lying on the bed recovering from his injuries was the Chinyu who had stepped into the spatial black hole and fallen into Zhu Dagong's trap. After a long time, he opened his eyes and muttered, "I can't absorb any of the rich heaven and earth origin energy here. Once I recover my ability to move in several days, I will have to find a way to expel the remnant space annihilation strength from my body as soon as possible." When Qin Yu left the turbulent space flows, he had nearly lost the ability to resist. A massive amount of space strength had corroded into his body and his cultivation had shattered. His ancient body had been severely damaged. If it weren't for his vitality being formidable enough, he feared his mortal body would have died long ago. With such serious bodily injuries, without the help of external strength, he would need an extremely long time to recover by relying on his own regenerative abilities. Qin Yu simply couldn't wait. Letting out a deep breath, Qin Yu suppressed the anxiety in his heart. In the current situation, he could only take things one step at a time. He closed his eyes and began to attempt to awaken the shattered cultivation in his body. Even if he could only control a small portion of it, he would still be able to gradually restore himself. Unfortunately, the space annihilation strength was extremely firm. The remnant power within Qin Yu's body was like an iron cage that locked down his cultivation. Even after trying for a long time, he still couldn't obtain anything. In his weak state, Qin Yu soon felt tired and fell into a deep sleep once more. 3 days later, Qin Yu was finally able to get off his bed and walk around. Although the demon body strength was slowly recovering, as long as he recovered even a tiny bit, it would be enough for him to maintain his mobility. This gave Qin Yu some confidence. As long as he could leave this room, he would be able to find a way to restore his injuries. The granny grinned at Qin Yu. She was amazed by this young man's regenerative abilities. After falling from such a high place, he was actually able to get out of bed in just a few days. His physique was amazing. The silver-haired old man humphed. "In the past, I also fell down once. I was able to walk in 4 days and recover in 20 days. The elders in the village said that I had a talent for cultivation, but my luck wasn't good, and I wasn't chosen by the immortals." Looking at Qin Yu's pale complexion, the old man frowned. "Young people shouldn't try to be brave. Your injuries haven't healed yet, so it's best if you lie down." Qin Yu smiled and shook his head. "I've been lying down for several days, and my entire body is numb. It feels good to sit down and bask in the sun for a while." The old man nodded and continued to work on his carpentry. He was too old and couldn't continue to graze. If he picked up the skills he learned in his youth, he would be able to support the family. The granny brought out a cushion for Qin Yu and began to prepare fodder for the young black-horned sheep in the pen. This was a type of sheep that was snow white with 2 black horns on its head. Its meat was incomparably delicious, and it was very popular with the guests outside the mountains. It was the family's most valuable asset and also their main source of income. Qin Yu smiled as he chatted with the old man. He listened to him brag about his experiences in his youth and also asked about the surrounding areas. Unfortunately, the furthest the old man had been to was Descendant City, which was 300 miles away, so he couldn't give Qin Yu any useful information. With Qin Yu's wisdom and experience, it was easy for him to make others feel as if they were bathing in a spring breeze. The more the old man spoke, the more excited he became. The granny coughed several times to tell him to restrain his bragging, but Qin Yu selectively ignored her. Suddenly, there was a shout from outside the courtyard. Perhaps it was because someone's throat was used too much, causing it to be a bit hoarse. A large herd of black-horned sheep obediently walked through the courtyard and into the cleaned pen. Then, there was the sound of a young girl chatting with someone. "Ali is so fierce. She can actually take care of such a large herd of black-horned sheep by herself. Once this herd of sheep is raised, we will definitely earn a great deal of money. I'm so envious. You brats, stop drooling over here. If you have the time, then work hard. Whoever marries, Ali will have their ancestral grave smoking." Ali was the granddaughter of the old couple. She loudly cursed at the group of men. If you want to marry this old lady, then look at yourself in the mirror. Life in the mountains was difficult, and many of them didn't know how to read and speak vulgarly. Lee's cursing actually caused the men to burst into laughter. The courtyard door was pushed open. A smiling young girl saw Qin Yu basking in the sun in the courtyard, and her complexion instantly darkened. "I'm tired." Ignoring the granny's shouts, Qin Yu walked towards his room. There was a pitiful cry as a pig lazily lying on the ground was ruthlessly kicked away. "Scram and sleep somewhere else." Bang! The door slammed shut. The pig's eyes brimmed with tears. It thought, just who did it provoke? Why was it so cold and cruel to it? It had to be known that Qin Yu wasn't the only one who was injured. "I am also injured. I am also injured." Unfortunately, no one was able to see its pained expression. The old man sighed, and the file in his hand sped up. The granny wiped her eyes and squeezed out a smile at Qin Yu. Although no one said anything, the relaxed atmosphere in the courtyard instantly vanished. Qin Yu narrowed his eyes but didn't say anything. As an outsider, it wasn't good for him to meddle in other people's matters. However, why did he feel that when that young girl passed by the courtyard, her eyes were filled with ill intent? I didn't provoke her, did I? Night fell. Qin Yu didn't lie down on his bed to rest. Rather, he paced back and forth in his room. In his current state, moving around was beneficial to his body's recovery. As the night deepened, he carefully pushed open the door. He stretched out his arms and stood beneath the moonlight, taking a deep breath. At this time, the night was like water. Above his head was pure black, and an incomparably large full moon quietly hung in the air. It was several times larger than the moon Qin Yu saw in the land of divinity and demons. As the cool moonlight shined down on the earth, it was no different from daytime. He didn't know whether it was an illusion or not, but as he bathed beneath this bright moonlight, Qin Yu felt a very comfortable feeling. Even the moon is different. It seems I was brought to a world extremely far away from the land of divinity and demons by the turbulent space flows. Qin Yu muttered to himself, a look of longing on his face. He didn't know if Yu Qi could suppress those powerhouses of the demonic path. As he was thinking, he suddenly paused. He carefully listened, and sure enough, he heard a faint sobbing sound. This sound seemed to be coming from Lee's room. Listening to the young girl sobbing, Qin Yu couldn't help but feel a bit irritated. He waited for a moment and saw that she had no intention of stopping, so he moved closer. Qin Yu was very careful not to leave his shadow on the window. He didn't want to be called a pervert for no apparent reason. "I'm just curious. This little girl doesn't know what's good for her. Why is she crying so sadly? Yes, that's it. Father, mother, your daughter misses you so much. I swore to your memorial tablets that I would definitely leave the mountains and become a cultivator to take revenge for you. But I'm afraid I can't do that. I know that grandfather and grandmother are good people. That's why they use the medicinal herbs I saved up to save people. But those medicinal herbs are for my own tuition fees. I'm 18 years old this year. After that age, even if I take out double the money, I still won't be able to take a master. Father, mother, your daughter has let you down, but I won't give up. I will definitely think of another way to take an immortal as my master." Outside the window, Qin Yu's complexion stiffened. He never imagined that the crux of the young girl's behavior during this time was actually because of him. This was a bit embarrassing. As he was lost in thought, he suddenly heard a sound behind him. Qin Yu turned and looked at the old man in the moonlight, feeling a bit guilty. With a gesture, the old man turned and left. Qin Yu followed, arriving at the black-horn sheep pen that was built outside the courtyard. The old man was silent. He added water and fodder to the black-horned sheep. Qin Yu watched for a moment and then began to help him. "There's no need to help. Your body hasn't recovered yet, so just watch." Qin Yu said, "It's fine." The old man glanced at him. "You don't need to feel guilty. I used the medicinal herbs that Ali prepared to save you because I had a selfish motive. The outside world isn't as good as it seems, and becoming a cultivator isn't necessarily any happier than staying in the mountains. These words were filled with wisdom. Chinyu paused and said, "What you said isn't wrong. But I heard Elise say that her parents—" The old man's eyes darkened. "That bastard boy didn't listen to me in the past and insisted on becoming a beast trainer. That is why he encountered such a calamity. I didn't want Ali to become a cultivator because of this." The old man put away the fodder and water in his hands and waved his hand. "It's late. Go to sleep early." Chinyu nodded. As he looked at the old man straight back, he could feel a trace of sadness. Perhaps what they said tonight was true, but this old couple must have felt guilt towards Ali. Or perhaps they were trying to comfort him. "Do you want to become a cultivator?" Chinyu whispered to himself and returned to his room. The next day, Ali woke up early and left the house. It could be seen that the young girl had covered herself up, but she couldn't completely cover up her swollen red eyes. Seeing Chinyu sitting in the courtyard, the young girl frowned. She walked outside without a word. Shouts soon sounded out. Large herds of black-horned sheep were herded into the mountains for grazing. The granny gestured with her fingers, indicating that Chinyu didn't care. He smiled and shook his head. The old man woke up a bit later than usual. After washing up and sitting down, the granny began to serve him a simple breakfast. "Brat Chin, since your body is fine, sit down and eat with us." Chinyu nodded. He wanted to help, but was stopped by the granny, so he sat down first. He looked at the porridge the granny brought over and said, "My injuries are almost healed. There is no need to use expensive herbs." The old man frowned. He looked at him and said, "All right, this is the last meal. Drink it clean." Chinyu smiled and agreed. After eating, the old man began to drink tea. Although the tea leaves were crushed, the taste was quite good. After taking 2 sips, Chinyu looked at the granny who was preparing the fodder. He said, "I've mostly recovered, so I want to find something to do. If the old man isn't worried, can I help Ali distribute some of the pills?" He pointed at the black-horned sheep cubs. "I think it's time for them to leave the pen." The old man put down his teacup. "You don't need to go home?" Chinyu shook his head. "There is no home here." It was unknown what the old man thought of, but he didn't ask any further. He nodded after a long moment of silence. "All right, I also have a set of tools for grazing. You can try bringing a few black-horned sheep with you." Chinyu smiled and nodded. "All right, I'll listen to you." He turned and looked into the distance at the rolling mountains. His eyes narrowed, a hint of anticipation in them. Chapter 678. Great Green Mountain was where the old master's family lived. The name of this mountain range didn't have any special meaning. This mountain range ran from east to west. Some peaks were steep and there were some that had gentle slopes. Because the steep peaks were extremely high, they blocked out the passing water vapor and formed abundant rainfall. Thus, the flat areas were filled with rivers and streams, creating a large amount of grassland suitable for grazing. Chinyu was currently standing on one of these grasslands. He wore thick leather pants and a white fur hat. He held a long whip in his hand and looked a bit like a qualified herder. Chinyu took a deep breath and felt the rich heaven and earth spiritual strength around him. He smiled and kicked the pig that was playing dead on the ground. Who would have thought that a wild boar would have abilities similar to a treasure-hunting mouse? "Hurry up and get to work. Don't forget, you are now my blood-fed beast. If anything happens to me, you won't be able to escape either." Big Pig howled in grief. He opened his eyes and ran towards the edge of the grassland, soon submerging into the forest. Before going out to graze, the old master had repeatedly warned Chinyu not to leave the safety of the pasture area and enter the wilderness where all sorts of powerful monster beasts lived. Although Chinyu's movements weren't hindered, his body was still weak. Even if he knew that there were treasures growing in these forests, there was no way he could go and pick them. Luckily, he had a wild boar that he could safely control. In the turbulent flows of space, Big Pig had absorbed the blood of Chinyu's ancient body to survive. But he had also inadvertently signed an ancient master recognition contract with Qin Yu, becoming his blood-fed beast. In the past, he hated that he couldn't kill Qin Yu, but now he had to do everything he could to ensure that Qin Yu could safely live on. This was truly a great mockery. It was no wonder that Big Pig had such a half-dead appearance every day. As the sun set in the west and the light dimmed, there was a loud, rumbling sound in the forest at the edge of the pasture. A large cloud of dust soared into the sky, and a thick tree was directly knocked down. Zhu Dagong ran out in a panic, holding a tricolored flower in his mouth. The flower stem was overflowing with light, and it was clearly a rare treasure. Bang! Behind him, over a dozen trees toppled over, revealing a massive shadow. This shadow seemed to be afraid of something. It angrily roared several times before leaving. Qin Yu looked at the dividing line between the pasture and the mountain forest. His eyes flashed, and he immediately suppressed his thoughts. Zhu Dagong lay on the ground panting. He looked like he had just been fished out of the water. His muscles were twitching, and he looked like he was about to collapse. Although his cultivation had temporarily disappeared, his eyesight was still sharp. He could see that this fellow was only exhausted and would be fine after a short rest. He squatted down and took the tricolored flower from Zhu Dagong's mouth. He wasn't sure what this thing's true effects were. However, to an alchemist, identifying all kinds of spiritual objects was one of the basic skills, so it was not difficult for him. He carefully extracted some juice from the rhizome and sniffed it. Although the tricolored flower did not seem to be harmful, there were all kinds of things in the boundless world. It was not like there were no venomous things that liked to grow into an attractive appearance. The most famous examples were the 1,000 illusion flower. It was far more attractive and harmless than the tricolored flower in front of him. But if someone dared to touch it, just a little bit of its juice would be enough to tear apart a powerful cultivator's stomach and even corrode their soul. There was no way to save it, and they would undoubtedly die. Qin Yu had just arrived, and the cultivation level of this world was, in theory, absolutely higher than that of the land of divinity and demons. He certainly didn't dare to be careless. Luckily, nothing disgusting happened. This tricolored flower was indeed a treasure. Although its effects were ordinary, it just happened to be useful in restoring the mortal body. Qin Yu had already discovered that in order to restore his cultivation, he had to first dispel the annihilating power of space in his body. But this was an extremely difficult matter. Taking a step back, restoring his mortal body became Qin Yu's best choice. With his powerful ancient body, after restoring a portion of his strength, he would be able to protect himself. However, Qin Yu wouldn't directly eat this tricolored flower. He had a better choice. After carefully putting away the tricolored flower, Qin Yu flicked the whip in his hand. With several loud shouts, he drove the herd of disobedient black-horned sheep down the mountain to the village. After the first day of herding ended, the granny carefully inspected the condition of the black-horned sheep. She couldn't help but smile and gesture to Qin Yu, praising him. The old man stroked his beard, a smug expression on his face. I can tell with a single glance that little Qin is good material for herding. But you still have to guard against arrogance and be careful in everything you do. Don't make any mistakes. Qin Yu smiled in agreement. A moment later, Ali returned with an even larger flock of sheep. As usual, she didn't give Qin Yu a good look, but she seemed to reflect on her actions. After greeting the old man and granny, she returned to her room. Dinner was eaten in Ali's room. The granny stayed inside for a long time. It was unknown what the grandmother and granddaughter were talking about, but when she came out, her eyes were red. Night fell. When everyone went to sleep, Qin Yu opened his eyes. He raised his hand and slowly spread his fingers. Wisps of dark blue light flowed out. He took out the tricolored flower and placed it in the light. The originally wilted flower that had been picked suddenly bloomed with a bright light. The petals gently trembled, and there seemed to be a tricolored light flowing on its surface. The next day, Qin Yu woke up early and went out. He faced the sun and stretched his waist. His pale face finally had a trace of rosy color. At the dining table, the old man looked at Chinyu and sighed. As expected, the young have a good foundation. After a night's sleep, his condition is much better than yesterday. It seems that in a few more days he will be fully recovered. Chinyu smiled. It's all thanks to Granny's good care and the herbs in the porridge that I can recover so quickly. Humph! A cold snort sounded behind him. Ah! Li glared at Chinyu with an unfriendly expression. She pulled out a chair and lowered her head to eat. Her table manners didn't match her delicate appearance at all. The speed at which she ate was frighteningly fast. In just a few bites, she finished her meal. Then, she bid farewell to the old man and Granny and left. Chinyu laid down his chopsticks. I'm also full. You two can clean up after me. He picked up his whip, put on his leather hat, and then drove the sheep into the mountains. What was different from yesterday was that there seemed to be more idle people in the village today. Most of them were youths around 20 to 33 years old. They stood on both sides of the narrow village road, looking at Chinyu from the corners of their eyes. They all had cold expressions on their faces, as if they didn't like Chinyu at all. She was the daughter of the Zhou family. In terms of appearance, figure, and temperament, there was nothing to pick on. She was also an expert at herding livestock. She had already swept through the surrounding villages and was regarded as the dream lover of many young men. In the first 2 years, in order to fight for a chance to get close to her, there had been several large group fights in the village. Afterwards, the Zhou family couple had an accident and Ali's wedding had been delayed. It was only then that the restlessness gradually subsided. But who would have thought that an inexplicable boy would appear out of nowhere? Not only did he move into the Zhou family, but from the current situation, it was clear that he would be staying here for a long time. What? Do you want to be a live-in son-in-law? Even if you dared to think so, we would never agree. Stop dreaming. Unfortunately, with Chinyu's experience, this little brat's vicious eyes had no effect on him at all. He drove the sheep out of the village, not even sparing him a glance. This boy is too arrogant. His lust has reached the heavens. Just you wait. The men of the Li family definitely won't let him off. Count me in. I have to think of a way to ruthlessly punish him. I have to let this boy know just why flowers are so red. With the pig in his left hand and the sheep in his right, Chinyu walked away in an extremely flashy manner. Amidst the low curses of the crowd, he ran away. Don't look so sad. Yesterday was a bit dangerous, but as long as you ran a bit faster, nothing bad would have happened. Hearing Chinyu's careless words of comfort, Big Pig nearly exploded on the spot. You bastard! How could you call it a bit dangerous? If it weren't for this Lord Pig's nimble legs, I would have died yesterday. But now he was a fish on the chopping block. No matter how much bitterness he felt, he could only swallow it down. Big Pig nodded in resignation. He was a beast raised by the blood of the ancient race. He was doomed to never be able to escape. He chose a grassland that was dense and lush with green and tender grass. He let the black-horned goats spread out to search for food on their own. He gave Zhu Dagong a meaningful glance, and this fellow lowered his head and went off to search for spiritual objects. Watching it fly away, a trace of worry flashed in Chinyu's calm eyes. In the turbulent flows of space, the wild boar had also suffered serious injuries. Its remaining strength was less than a tenth of its original state. Having its search for spiritual objects was only a last resort. Chinyu had to think of a way to change the current situation as soon as possible. He couldn't place all of his hopes of recovery on Big Pig's shoulders. He had to find a stronger guarantee. In truth, he didn't need to look elsewhere. Chinyu already had a trump card on him, and that was the purple-backed bluewing ants in his imperial spirit bag. But now that he had lost all of his magic power, there was no way for him to open it. As long as he could restore a bit of his magic power, he could do this. At that time, with the protection of the purple-back bluewing ants, Chinyu would be much more confident. How can I open a crack in the shackles formed by the annihilating power of space, even if I can only maintain it for a single breath of time? Qin Yu whispered to himself. He subconsciously frowned, a look of worry on his face. This was truly a difficult problem. On the second day of grazing, the wild boar brought back a blue gourd. It opened its mouth to reveal a thick golden liquid that resembled honey. Smelling it, one would feel refreshed. In terms of quality, the blue gourd was absolutely above the tricolored flower. But Big Pig had also paid a price for it. There was a gash on its forehead that extended from its head to its nose and nearly pierced through its eyeballs. It was a miserable sight. After comforting it, Qin Yu couldn't help but fall into a daze. As he thought, his worries were beginning to come true. Once something happened to Big Pig, his recovery plan would immediately be interrupted. If so, then the situation Qin Yu faced would truly be disastrous. Looking at Qin Yu's absent-minded appearance, Big Pig's lungs nearly exploded with rage. This ungrateful bastard, this Lord Pig will curse you to never be erect for the rest of your life. Ah! Qin Yu simply didn't notice that Big Pig was nearly angered to death. As he was thinking about other matters, he hurried the flock of sheep towards the mountain village. A group of mountain village youths were already waiting for him at a place he had to pass. Look, that boy is coming. Good, good, good. My fists are as big as bowls, and I'm already finding it hard to resist. Have him stand up and walk away on his stomach. Hee, the timing is just right. Li should be here soon. Let her see just what kind of man is the best choice for her. As these words were spoken, the mountain village youths began to rub their palms together, filled with even more vigor. They decided that in the following beating, they would display their most awe-inspiring performance in order to move the heart of this beautiful woman. Unfortunately, what they didn't know was just what sort of situation they would face. They had guessed the beginning, but they hadn't guessed the ending from the very start. The script had deviated from their beautiful imaginations. Hey, foreign boy, stand still for me. The Li family's boss shouted out loud. But before he could finish speaking, he couldn't help but swallow the rest of his words. Across from him, there was a wild boar that was fiercely staring at him. The ferocity in its small eyes actually caused his legs to cramp. Damn, for better or worse, this father was still an experienced herdsman, okay? He had encountered countless jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards in his life, but he had actually been frightened by such a small wild boar. This was simply too shameful. The Li family's boss regained his composure, and his face flushed red. But before he could do anything, there was a loud, rumbling sound as the earth trembled. The wild boar bared its fangs and rushed forwards. Ah, my butt! What kind of pig is this? It's actually so strong. Save me! In just several blinks of an eye, the aggressive mountain village youths had been ravaged by the wild boar. They cried out for their parents, rolling and crawling in all directions. Qin Yu regained his composure. All he saw was a complete mess. Big Pig, who had vented his anger, walked back while shaking his fat butt. No one died, right? Oh, that's good. Let's go. With a flick of his whip, Qin Yu drove the flock of sheep into the village, leaving behind a group of bruised youths with inexplicable grief and indignation. They had actually been bullied by a pig. What happened to you all? A young girl's surprised voice sounded out. Li looked at the distressed village youths in front of her with a puzzled expression. The Li family's boss immediately let go of his hand that was covering his butt. He dryly chuckled that we were just exercising our bodies. If we don't have a good physique, how can we be suitable herdsmen? Boss Li is right, we were just exercising. That's right. It's just exercising, so it's inevitable that we were a bit heavy-handed. But we aren't afraid of pain. Ali frowned. She felt that this group of boys was a bit strange today, but she didn't think too much about it. She nodded and drove the flock of sheep away, vanishing from the village. As they watched Ali leave, the group of mountain village youths all had serious expressions. They looked at each other, and in silence they reached an incomparably serious decision. They absolutely could not let anyone know of what happened today. Otherwise, they might as well find a block of tofu and kill themselves.